Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Nahida, Lumine and Nilou? Part 2. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Naruto, Paimon and Lumine continued their walk to the Northland Bank, although Naruto did look rather distracted with Lumine and Paimon looking worried. Is something the matter? Was it Hudao? She does seem kinda odd, but I don't think she is a bad person or anything. Lumine looked at Naruto in the eyes. Naruto smiled and shook his head. He looked at Lumine and Paimon for a moment before he sighed. It's not her. I just think Zhongli will be someone different than what I expect. Naruto commented as he tried to explain his feelings. Paimon floated over to Naruto with a confused expression as she put a hand over her chin. I thought you haven't met Zhongli before? Paimon asked with Lumine nodding along. My Archean is the god of knowledge. She makes an effort to keep track of people of interest, and Zhongli is someone she thinks is a person of interest. She has heard stories of him, but admits stories don't necessarily reflect a person here and now personality. Naruto stated vaguely, not saying that Nahida and Zhongli were friends before. Rather Buer and Morax before their current vessels. Lumine had an unimpressed expression as she put her hands on her hips. Zhongli is nice enough, but someone who looks responsible. He seems to really have bad grasp on Mora. He seems to forget his wallet the entire time we were preparing for the rite of parting for Morax. Lumine commented with a sigh before her face grew sour. Zhongli actually had to borrow Mora from Chilled of all people. Not only as part of the Fatui harbingers, but he actually seemed nice before. Lumine ranted, showing her annoyance with the harbinger. Lumine. Paimon stated sadly as Lumine sighed, closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. Lumine opened her eyes and blinked when she felt Naruto lay a hand on her shoulder gently as he looked at her kindly. I understand. Chilled will have to explain himself and be held accountable for his actions one way or another. Naruto agreed as Lumine smiled, glad her new friend understood her feelings. Naruto smiled before he sighed, getting the two girls' attentions. I don't like the Fatui either, or at least the harbingers. Naruto admitted, getting curious looks sent his way. Lumine looked amused as she remembered how the Knight of Favonius, especially Jean, seemed annoyed at the presence of the Fatui in Mondstadt, and how Ningguang showed her outright displeasure at the actions of Chilled releasing Oshul. Did they do something to you before? Paimon asked softly as she hovered over Naruto, looking concerned. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he clenched his fists. Lumine noticed Naruto clenching his teeth before he took several deep breaths. Paimon looked nervous, and Naruto noticed he was getting worked up as he sighed. Sorry, I am not angry with either of you. To be honest, I rather enjoy both of your presence. It's nice to be around people who are so honest and earnest. You wear your hearts on your sleeves. Kinda like me. Naruto remarked, looking them over. Lumine and Paimon gave awkward smiles as they looked uncertain. That is supposed to be a compliment, right? Paimon thought. He's certainly rather blunt. It's not a bad thing, but still, Lumine thought. The Fatui haven't done anything directly to me, but I suppose it's because they don't know of me yet. Sumeru has been rather quiet in recent years, with little to no Fatui presence in our borders. Naruto remarked, getting back to his story as he looked rather reminiscent. That makes sense. They seemed to be a nuisance when I was in Mondstadt, but Chilled releasing a god in Liyue seemed to be rather extreme in my opinion. Lumine noted, with Paimon nodding her head. However, years ago, before I got to Tavid, let alone Sumeru, my little sister was kidnapped by the number 2 of the harbingers. You could call him the Doctor. That being his codename for his rank in the Fatui harbingers. Naruto remarked with a notable distasteful and sour expression. Number 2, is he like super strong then? Paimon gasped in fear as Lumine bit her lip in nervousness. It is said that the top 3 of the harbingers have powers comparable to the Archons themselves. From what I understand, while 2 lower rank members will usually go to one of the other lands of Tavid for their notorious misdeeds, a single member of the 3 is usually sufficient to handle the job themselves. Naruto commented ominously. And 2. As strong as the Archeans themselves, and they have 3 of them in their ranks, Paimon screamed as she started to fly out of control in fear and confusion. Paimon, calm yourself. Lumine shouted, although she too had a look of nervousness, but she hid it well. Naruto smiled at the fairy-like girl as he gently plucked her out of the sky and held her by the scuff of her neck as if she was a kitten getting a huff from Paimon. Paimon blushed when he let her go, making her stumble in the air, but then patted her gently on the head. You don't to worry. You and Lumine are my friends and I protect my friends. Naruto promised her with a fox-like grin as Lumine looked away with her cheeks slightly red. Does this guy charm every girl he meets, or is this just his natural charm? Lumine thought a bit sourly as she was acting more like a schoolgirl than a warrior that she saw herself. Aren't you worried? The Archons are supposed to these super powerful gods that reign over this world. Lumine asked, although her tone was a bit skeptical at the power of the so-called almighty Archons. I mean Venti is nice and all, but I hardly call him almighty unless he simply won't fight like what I would expect someone almighty would. Lumine thought as she thought Venti is reliable but harmless. Naruto shrugged as he gave an easy smile. No one is almighty. I don't believe the Archons are unbeatable, let alone the harbingers. If anything, the fact they would rather sneak around rather than do actual direct attack saying something about their courage. Naruto commented, showing his disdain for the harbingers. Lumine and Paimon looked at each other but then shivered and stepped back. Naruto's eyes had narrowed as his hand flickered lightning on and off. However, if the harbingers decide to attack my home or my people, then I won't sit back in fear. I will defend my people. I will not let them get attacked just to avoid conflict with the harbingers or the Fatui or the land Snezhnaya itself. Naruto warned as a dark smile appeared on his face. We will keep that in mind. Lumine stated with a smile as she wiped a bit of sweat from the back of her head. She still remembered the awe and slight fear she had when she Naruto utterly destroyed the ancient sea god Oshul. A being that herself, the Adepti and several vision users were unable to harm let alone defeat. Naruto had defeated it with seemingly relative ease as he did not show exhaustion to her after the fight. Paimon hummed as she remembered something Naruto mentioned. Hey. You said sister, right? But you are from another world, right? So how could the doctor go after her? Paimon pointed out as Naruto's negative aura seemed to vanish when little sister was mentioned. Naruto was all grins again as he sighed happily. Is your sister like my brother? Another person who traveled to this world from another one? Lumine asked curiously but hopefully. Lumine? Paimon said sadly, knowing her partner was trying to find any clues on her brother as they still didn't have any clues on his whereabouts or his condition at the moment. Naruto gave Lumine a look of sympathy and shook his head. Nope, my sister was born in Sumeru and lived on Teyvat like everyone else. I just call her my sister as our bond is what I would expect an older brother would be for his little sister. Naruto admitted sheepishly as he rubbed his head. Naruto waved his hand as the air around him formed into a cloud which reflected the face of a young girl who looked a few years younger than Lumine. The girl was in her mid-teens with short wavy light green hair that reached her shoulders. Her purple eyes seemed to shine with an innocence of youth. She was mainly wearing a brown mini dress that reached her hips and a green shawl over her shoulders. She also wore a golden hairpin that was in the shape of a leaf. On her waist was a belt which hung her dendrovision proudly. She wore brown stockings on her legs of different lengths. The left stocking was just above her knee and the right stocking was just below the edge of her dress length, leaving 2 patches of skin shown. She also wore brown boots and a yellow scarf on her back that went to her hips. That is a cute sister of yours. What's her name? Paimon asked with a tilt of her head. Naruto smiled fondly at the image of the young girl. Kale. She isn't that young despite what I like to tell her. She is already 16 after all, but I can't help it. Naruto admitted with a chuckle. Whenever I treat Kale like a teen rather than a young woman, she puffs out her cheeks at me. Naruto comments fondly as the Imagine glared up at him in response. She is kinda proving his point about being younger. Paimon noted with Lumine nodding. Her pout does make her look too cute to be annoyed or threatening. Lumine added. Naruto's smile grew softer as he waved his hand, letting the cloud dissipate into the air. Despite my teasing, I truly do enjoy her being around. I owe her a lot. She is what I would want in a little sister, even if we are not joined by blood or anything. Naruto stated firmly. His eyes had a fierce protectiveness to it that made Lumine blinked. It reminded her of how either looked at her whenever they were in danger, as either was the older twin. Owe her? For what? Paimon asked with a curious expression. Naruto blinked before a small smile appeared. I might tell you some other time. Just know if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have stayed in Sumeru, at least at first. Naruto remarked with a nod to himself. An imagine of Kale looking notable sick with her Elazar making her body rather weak appeared in Naruto's mind. In the memory, Naruto was waking up in her bed while Kale was watching over him despite her clearly being the one who needed the bed more. If it wasn't for Kale, I might not cared what happened to Sumeru. This wonderful child really is the one I owe most to. Naruto thought to himself. I would like it if one day you could meet her. She is still rather shy, so I would like it if she can make some more friends, especially with honest people. Naruto commented as Lumine and Paimon blinked. Paimon grew a huge grin as she pointed to herself smugly. Paimon wants to meet her too. I want to see if she has any embarrassing stories about you she can share. Paimon declared as Naruto raised an eyebrow. Good luck with that. If anything, I have more embarrassing stories about her rather than me. Naruto thought, thinking it over. Lumine nodded as she smiled at Naruto. She seems like a lovely friendly girl. I believe I can be friends with her easily enough. Lumine stated honestly. This made Naruto grin as he stepped forward to give her a hug but stopped himself. He settled for giving Lumine's hand a gentle squeeze. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just don't tell her I asked you first. I want her to try to make friends on her own, or at least try. Naruto said in appreciation. As Lumine and Payman continued to walk with pleased smile, they missed a dark look appear over Naruto. Naruto's eyes were looking down, creating a shadow over his eyes from his spiky hair covering the sunlight. If the doctor ever comes near Kale again, I will make sure he will not go back to the cryo-Archean in one piece, and every fragment of him will be destroyed. I will never let him experiment on her or anyone else like what he did to her again. Naruto promised as his eyes gained an electric spark. Naruto looked up with his easy smile with not a hint of his dark thoughts on his face. It's sweet that Naruto is so protective of his sister even if they are not blood-related. Payman whispered to Lumine, who looked at Naruto with her eyes with interest. Yeah, it is sweet. Lumine stated, half paying attention. Lumine's cheeks had a tiny hint of pink from when Naruto briefly held her hand, and she wouldn't admit it, but she found it a rather endearing quality that Naruto cared so much for his family. I wonder if he would care so much for our, Lumine thought before her eyes widened as she was getting into a topic she did not want to think about. Lumine. I am looking for my brother first and foremost. I don't have time thinking of things like a future with Naruto. Lumine chided herself as she looked away, fanning her face in embarrassment. Payman looked at Lumine with concern, but Naruto shaking his head made her not confront Lumine on her weird expressions. Lumine. About your brother, Naruto decided to say as Lumine lost her flustered looks as her eyes widened. Lumine instantly ran over to Naruto and stood in front of him looking frantic. Do you know something about either? Lumine asked with her eyes full of hope. Naruto looked away, not wanting to crush her hopes. I do know he still is alive and he is on this world. I do know that for sure. Naruto promised as Lumine sighed, putting a hand over her chest. Lumine closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. Thank goodness. I am not too late, Lumine stated with a pleased smile. Naruto looked away as he bit his lip. Payman smiled at Lumine's happy expression but noticed Naruto looking away. Naruto. Is there a but here? Payman asked as Lumine looked up with surprise. Naruto was silent as he tried to explain carefully. Naruto? Lumine asked softly, looking at him in the eyes. Your brother, I and my Archean haven't met him in person. Naruto admitted after a moment. Really, neither of you have met or seen him? Lumine asked, looking a bit let down. Naruto shook his head as he gave her a look of sympathy. I have only been in this world for a few years and only been in Sumeru till I arrived in Liyue to defeat Oshul. Naruto clarified as Payman and Lumine nodded as it made sense. And the Dendro Archon? I believe her name is Buer. Payman asked as Lumine looked eagerly at him. This made Naruto feel guilty as he couldn't reveal everything he and Nahida saw in the world tree Erminsel. Partly as even with Nahida direct connection with the tree either appeared to have very odd presence in the tree. Unlike Naruto and Lumine, who being otherworldly travelers were not recorded in the world history, either did appear, but it was very sketchy. However, the people Naruto and Lumine met and interacted with did have their interactions recorded, but not anything that Naruto and Lumine did that was not seen by a person born in Tavid. AN3. Buer hasn't seen your brother either. Some things happened in Sumeru that had long-lasting effects on her. She has only recently been able to resume her duties as the god of wisdom and Archean of Sumeru. Naruto stated as his heart grew sad when he remembered Nahida in her childlike form just floating inside her seal, being asleep and unable to move. Sanctuary of Surasthana was both Nahida's home and prison for the last 500 years. Well, what happened to Buer? Maybe if I knew what happened I could find some more information on either. Lumine tried to probe, but she winced when Naruto turned to her with a glare. It's not my story to tell. Naruto snapped, but he put a hand on his cheek as he realized how he sounded. Sorry. It's just Buer hasn't had the best life like you would expect from an Archon. If you come to Sumeru, I will introduce you to her. If she wants to tell you the story then she can. Naruto promised, giving them a small smile. Lumine looked at him for a minute before she nodded. I understand. I won't probe then. It's clear your Archon is very important to you. Lumine noted softly as Payman nodded. Buer has the same values as I do on peace. I respect her immensely and I will protect her and her values as best as I can. Naruto remarked as he started to walk again. I wonder how Lumine will act when she finds out her brother has joined the Abyss Order and even considered their prince. Naruto thought sadly. Naruto's eyes had turned into Kurama's narrowed eyes for a moment, but he controlled the bloodlust enough so Lumine and Payman would not sense or feel the killer intent. I will never forgive those sages for what they did to my Nahida. She still isn't after these years, Naruto thought hatefully before he calmed his heart and his eyes returned to the sky blue. The trio managed to get to the bank without any incident and went inside, but Lumine and Payman saw a sight that shocked them to their core. Naruto only narrowed his eyes as he resisted pulling a sword out to end Signora. Signora and Chilled were one side with a calm-looking Zhongli. What is Zhongli doing with Signora and Chilled? Payman asked loudly as she looked at the three of them with wide eyes. This loud proclamation got the three of them to look at the new trio with various looks. Signora was annoyed but did raise an eyebrow at Naruto. Chilled briefly looked guilty when he saw Lumine glare at him, but he hid his expression with a carefree smile. Zhongli gave a nod to Payman and Lumine of acknowledgement. He looked at Naruto with interest and a knowing smile, making Naruto on edge. Signora sighed and crossed her arms over her rather notable chest. "Oh good. The rats come scurrying in as soon as you think you have a moment of peace," Signora stated with a condescending smirk. "Better a rat than a monster," Chilled whispered, which only Naruto and Zhongli caught. "Seems like the harbingers are not as united as the world is led to believe," Naruto thought with amusement. Naruto couldn't help a small smile at Chilled's comment, getting the attention of Signora, who turned to him with a look of annoyance as she looked at him. "Oh, and who is this brat? You better have a good reason for appearing here in front of two harbingers and wasting my time," Signora claimed as Chilled rolled his eyes at his fellow harbinger antics. Lumine and Payman looked nervously at Naruto, who to his credit looked rather calm and cheerful. He even took the time to wink at Lumine before he looked back at Signora with a flat expression. "Hello, the almighty harbinger Signora," Naruto mocked as Signora grit her teeth, and Chilled even chuckled while Zhongli retained his calm expression. "I am Naruto Uzumaki, and you can just call me a diplomat from Sumeru. I come on orders from Lady Buer, the god of wisdom," Naruto stated with a bow. "Insolent brat. Sumeru is barely a land with any sort of military force, and your archon is weak. No battle prowess, and from what I hear even a lack of love from her own," Signora commented before she stopped. Before anyone could react, Naruto had dashed forward and stopping a mere foot from Signora with a hand on his sword, which had appeared on his hip in its sheath. Naruto's eyes were ice cold and filled with power enough to make even Signora look away in slight fear. Nobody had even seen Naruto move except Zhongli with his many years of experience, and to a lesser degree Lumine, who saw something. "What is with this brat? He is calm when I insult him, but when I even imply something against his archon his personality changes completely. Is his loyalty to a weak archon like the Dendro archon that absolute?" Signora thought as her eyes narrowed. "Wow, talk about fierce. I have to admit I am rather impressed with that speed. Naruto was it? I will remember your name. You can call me Chilled." Chilled whistled in excitement, ignoring Signora beside him glaring at him. Payman didn't even see Naruto move. He was 1 minute next to us, but next second he was in front of Signora. Payman added as she floated around nervously. "Don't worry, Payman. You aren't in danger unless you threaten Sumeru or my archon," Naruto assured her, but kept his glare at Signora, who returned it. "Okay, I will keep that in mind. The Dendro archon is off limits for any sort of insults." I have a feeling he was going to cut off Signora's tongue off if she kept talking, Lumine thought, but she had a small smile on her face. Zhongli's face was still calm, but he did adopt a look of serious disappointment. "Enough. Fighting will not be tolerated in this place, especially as Liyue has only recently avoided calamity," Zhongli stated with deathly calm tone as he narrowed his eyes at Signora and Naruto. "Wow, Zhongli is scary. He is giving Payman the creeps," Payman remarked as she hid behind Lumine, who was giving Zhongli a look of confusion. "The way Zhongli is speaking makes it seem like he was there when Oshul was released. I know it was probably hard to avoid at least hearing about a 100-foot ancient god arising from the ocean. Especially when it was so close, but still, he is giving me worrying vibe," Lumine realized. Signora narrowed her eyes before she very reluctantly lowered her head slightly. "Pardon my tone. I suppose I spoke a bit out of place." Signora apologized, but her expression showed great resentment, as if saying even these words were taking all her restraint to say. Chilled snicker got a glare from Signora as Zhongli nodded as if satisfied. "And you, Naruto?" Zhongli asked with a warning tone as he looked at the blonde with an expression that seemed to far more ancient and colder than what Lumine and Payman were expecting. "Beep. Zhongli is looking even scarier. Heck, Payman think even Signora is scared," Payman whispered to Lumine, who nodded. "Is Zhongli that powerful? I mean, Signora didn't even flinch when she took Venti's gnosis by force," Lumine thought to herself. Naruto was giving an equal glare at Zhongli as Lumine, Payman, Chilled and Zhongli shuddered. It seemed like the very air was quaking from an unseen pressure coming from Zhongli and Naruto. "Nobody disrespects Lady Buer. Nobody. I don't care who it is or how many there are. I will protect her and her name no matter what," Naruto declared as he glared at Signora, who scoffed at him. "Naruto. I will ask again. Will you calm down and speak like civilized people?" Zhongli asked forcibly as he put a hand out. Naruto gave Zhongli a wary look as he took his own hand off his sword hilt and nodded. He started to walk slowly back to Lumine and Payman. While his back was to Zhongli, he stopped as he bit his lip. "Fine. I apologize for making a ruckus. However, my mind doesn't change. I will protect Lady Buer from anyone who would bring her harm. Anyone," Naruto assured Zhongli quietly before he continued his walk back to Lumine and Payman. "But of course. I understand why she chose you to be her guardian," Zhongli whispered while a smile appeared on his face. "Traveler from the stars and hero for Buer. Zhongli whispered even quieter, but Naruto, pausing and almost turning around, assured Zhongli he had heard the final part. Does he know? No, impossible. I have to believe he would not stood by while she was sealed. He probably heard of what I have done in her service at most. Naruto beepized with his eyes narrowed for a moment. Naruto had returned to Lumine and Payman's side with a look of apologetic and nervousness. Sorry about that. I lost a bit of control there. Naruto told them as he waved his hand as the sword and sheath vanished into thin air. Payman is so confused. What is happening here? Payman whined as Naruto laughed but gave her a wave. Signora scoffed before schooling her face to look neutral and cool-headed again. Now that little interruption is done. Signora commented, sending a nasty look at Naruto before schooling her expression once again. We can finish our business. Signora stated as she stared at Zhongli, much to the shock of Lumine and Payman. Wait, what? Zhongli for working with the Fatui? With Signora? Payman shouted in shock. What is going on here? Zhongli? Lumine demanded with a look of betrayal on her face as Zhongli looked uncertain. Jild was about to chime in, but Naruto cough got everyone's attention. Relax. Zhongli is not working for the Fatui or Signora or the harbingers. Naruto assured Lumine and Payman calmly, much to their surprise. What are you talking about? Lumine asked before Naruto tilted his head to Zhongli. Why don't you explain, Morax? Naruto asked seriously as his playful expression vanished for one of pure seriousness, with his eyes focused solely on Zhongli. Payman and Lumine jaws dropped in shock and confusion. Morax, Payman and Lumine shouted as they looked at Naruto, who was focused on Zhongli. I see, so, you know the truth, Zhongli remarked as he looked at Naruto with interest. However, Jild and Signora were as shocked as Lumine and Payman. How do you know of him? Signora demanded as she took a step forward. Naruto turned to her with a dangerous look, but he sighed. Did your Archon not tell you that mine is the god of wisdom? Do you truly believe she wouldn't know about Morax's current form? Naruto asked smugly as Nahida's face appeared in his mind, smiling. You knew the entire time? Lumine asked, looking betrayed at Naruto, who gave her a sad look. Sorry. I knew before I came to Liyue, but I will say I still came in to help out regardless if Morax was here or not. I chose to do that because I do care. Naruto told her as he put a hand on her shoulder briefly. So, wait a minute. Payman shouted as she floated above Naruto and pointed a finger accusatory at Zhongli. If you are Morax the Geo Archean, why didn't you help against that water god? You're supposed to be super strong, right? Payman asked while Zhongli sighed, avoiding everyone's eyes. Signora regained her smug expression as she gave a mocking smile at Zhongli, who looked away. I would like to know that too. I was not aware that Morax was sitting next to me this entire time, and I feel a bit betrayed. I was not in the know when Signora clearly knew. Jild stated angrily as he gripped his hand and glared at Signora and Zhongli. Lumine actually looked at Jild without anger and felt a hint of pity, although she was still ticked a bit at Jild for his actions. Perhaps to satisfy everyone you should explain. I do not have the patience to hear whining afterwards. Signora suggested, crossing her arms. Zhongli looked tired, as if he aged 1,000 years in a mere minute before he returned to his normal expression and sighed. Very well. As Naruto has plainly stated, I am Morax, or rather the vessel for Morax. Zhongli is a mortal name for the god Morax. Zhongli explained as he crossed his arms and his eyes seemed to be 1,000 miles away. Payman is a bit confused. Do we call you Morax or Zhongli from now on? Payman asked carefully as she hovered near Lumine's face, who was looking at Zhongli with a wary expression. Zhongli is this current form's name. I am Morax, but if you would like to call me Zhongli, that is fine as well. Zhongli clarified before he looked at Naruto. What name does my friend Buer go by now? I heard at one point people called her Kasbipi for some time, but now? Zhongli asked pleasantly. However, everyone was surprised when Naruto glared at Zhongli as if he said something taboo. Don't call her Kasbipi. That name is a name of her shame and Sumeru's failed past. Naruto hissed as he clenched his hand. Memories of Nahida trapped in her prison and people calling her Lesser Lord Kasbipi in hushed tones when he first came to Sumeru. I will never accept her being called Kasbipi again, especially as it was tied to Lesser Lord when people spoke of her. Those damn sages, especially the first ones who came up with that name. Naruto thought resentfully. Buer is Nahida to me and Lady Buer to her nation. That is how it is and we see it. Naruto stated defiantly before his expression turned curious once again. Zhongli briefly looked confused as if he didn't know why Naruto was getting offended before his eyes narrowed briefly. Is there a part of Sumeru history that is not public knowledge that lead to my friend Buer to suffer before Naruto arrived? Zhongli thought to himself. Zhongli shrugged but nodded in agreement. Very well, young Naruto. If that is how she and you wish to refer to her, I will honor it. Nahida sounds like a name she picked for herself. Zhongli promised with a genuine look of appreciation on his face. How's my dear friend Buer? It has been a rather long time since I had the pleasure of talking to her in person. Zhongli asked with a pleasant smile. Naruto resisted giving him a nasty smile and retort. Yeah, try 500 years. I know it's what you all decided when you became the archons of each region to stay out of each other's affairs, or at least it is what I assume. However, I am still annoyed Nahida was sealed away for all that time and had no one, not even you archons, to talk to or interact with. Naruto thought sourly on behalf of his beloved archon. Although I think in my heart if Barbados, Beelzebub or Morax knew that their friend Buer was in that state, they would have stormed Sumeru City to rescue her or at least send their people. Maybe not Barbados, as his people are free and everything. Damn those sages for hiding any and all information about Nahida for those centuries, especially not letting her confinement leak out to the other nations. Naruto thought to himself as his heart ached for a moment. Naruto was about to answer before Signor's rude cough got everyone's attention. Enough. Get to the point. If you wish to exchange pleasantries, do it after I leave. I do not have the time, patience or willpower to hear all your nonsense. Signora commanded with notable annoyance. Jild put his hands in surrender when Lumine turned to him with a look of annoyance at the two harbingers. Hey, don't blame me. I personally think of a victim here as well. I was just doing my job. It wasn't personal. Jild claimed with a nervous smile. Zhongli gave the harbingers a look of amusement, but his glance assured Naruto he wasn't done talking to him yet. Very well. Morax has been the father of Liyue for many years. More than most can comprehend. I intended to protect this land and its people for many years to come. However, recently I have been thinking, what would Liyue do if its god was no longer among them? Zhongli continued his tale as he looked at Lumine and Payman with a kind smile. Therefore, I made a contract with the Tsaritsa, the Syro Archon who acted through Signora. Zhongli noted as Signora had a smirk on her face. Contract? You mean things that happened you knew about? Lumine asked with worry. I faked my death, let the Adepti, Kixing and Jild go through their games, while I watched as the mortal Zhongli. Zhongli added as Jild sent Zhongli and Signora a look of betrayal. So, you used me to unseal the sea god Oshul without telling me anything. I merely acted as a harbinger without any clue on what was happening behind the curtain, Jild shouted in anger. Signora gave Jild a look of condescension as she crossed her arms. Why are you so offended? You did your job excellently and I will make sure your actions are not unnoticed. Signora asked with a mocking smile, making Jild growl at her. So you wanted Oshul to come back to life? Why? He almost killed us. Lumine asked with a look of betrayal at Zhongli, who looked down. Zhongli was silent as if he didn't expect Lumine to take it so hard. Detest us, or rather Liyue itself. Naruto declared, getting everyone's attention. Naruto? Lumine asked as Naruto gave her a reassuring smile before his expression turned rather cool when he looked at Zhongli. I can only guess, but I believe Morax wanted to see if the factions of Liyue could come together if they faced a common enemy. In this case an ancient god like Oshul, to see what would happen after he died. Naruto suggested, looking at Zhongli. Lumine and Payman also turned to Zhongli, who looked up with a sigh. He speaks the truth. I did want to see if Liyue could withstand a disaster like Oshul without the aid of Morax, so I set things up in such a way he would be released. Zhongli admitted. Without the aid of Morax? Please. If you wanted to, Morax could have easily sealed away Oshul with ease. Signora commented as Zhongli stayed silent. Wah. Test or not, we almost died. Heck, if Naruto hadn't come along, we probably would have. Payman pointed out. Lumine and Payman turned to Naruto with a look of gratitude, who shrugged it off with a smile. Jild gave a nod of respect but kept his face neutral while Signora looked surprised. Wait. This diplomat was the one who slayed Oshul? Impossible. He is but a child and he slayed a god, Signora asked in denial. Naruto turned to her with a smirk as he cracked his knuckles. Would you like to test me? I assure you I am not afraid you were the harbingers. Naruto asked as his blue eyes appeared to emit power and light. Signora for once was a bit unnerved as she took a step back before Zhongli shook his head. Enough. I care not for your grievances. I swore a contract and as the god of contracts I intend to uphold it. Zhongli stated firmly as Naruto shrugged with a carefree smile. What is this child? He is no archon, and yet just from that one challenge I am starting to think he might have actually slayed Oshul. Signora thought in fear, but her face showed her usual confidence. So, did we pass your test? I assure you if you test them again, I will intervene. Naruto asked, coldly glaring at Jild, Signora and Zhongli. Zhongli put his hands in surrender. I can assure you, another test will not be needed. I did not expect the arrival of Lumine or Payman in my initial plans, but they helped move things along, so I give you my thanks. Zhongli revealed as he nodded to Lumine and Payman, who awkwardly nodded back. And me? I am not of Liyue and I slayed a god you intended to have sealed away. Naruto asked warily as he looked ready to summon a weapon if needed. His movements show years of experience. He is never off his guard, or at least he will never be caught off guard. He is constantly checking us and his surroundings. Chilled thought as he saw Naruto eyes flicker to the sides briefly. Zhongli smiled and clapped his hands, showing he was pleased. True, I did think at best the Adepti, Lumine and Kixing would seal away Almighty Oshul. I did not expect he would actually be slain, especially from a man who had no reason to intervene in the affairs of Liyue. Unless Buer asked you to come here specifically on her behalf. Zhongli suggested. Naruto crossed his arms and stayed silent, refusing to answer. However, the death of Oshul by an outside party is still a result I considered favorable. Despite lacking the strength to defeat him, the Adepti and Kixing, or rather mortals, did come together for a brief while. This confirmed to me that if given a chance and opportunity, mortals and Adepti can defend Liyue and live in peace. Zhongli declared as he nodded his head in approval. Zhongli turned to Signora with a serious expression. Now the contract is fulfilled. That which thou seeketh is now bestowed unto thee, for my promise is solid as stone. Zhongli declared as he put a hand out. Suddenly a chest piece materialized out of nowhere into his hand as Signora's expression grew hungry and greedy. Is that the gnosis like Ventes? Payman shouted as Lumine gasped. Yes. The gnosis of the Geo-Archean. As I promised in the contract to end all contracts. The gnosis is now the property of the Tsaritsa. Zhongli declared as he put his hand out in front of himself. Signora started to walk towards Zhongli but stopped when Naruto stepped forward. Naruto? Lumine gasped when she saw Naruto looked coolly at Signora. What treachery is this? Signora demanded, although Zhongli looked just as surprised as her. Step aside, Naruto. My promises I keep. The gnosis will be given to the Tsaritsa as defined in the contract. Zhongli told him sternly. Naruto grunted, unable to hold back a look of annoyance. I made no such promises and neither did Nahida. Just because you are willing to give it up doesn't mean I will just sit back and let it happen. Naruto pointed out as Chilled smirked at his tenacity. Naruto. I will say it again. Step aside. This contract must be fulfilled. Whether you come out of this uninjured or not is still your decision. Zhongli warned as his eyes glowed and a pressure made Payman fall the ground. Lumine and Chilled were forced onto a knee while Signora struggled to keep on her feet. Only Naruto appeared unaffected as he turned to Signora. I don't really care about the gnosis, to be honest. They matter little to me and I have no intention of holding or stealing any. Naruto clarified as he chatted calmly, still unaffected by the pressure let off by Zhongli. However, I will give a message for your Archon and fellow harbingers. Stay out, Sumeru, and do not think I am not watching every second for you little group. Naruto warned as his eyes started to glow and a pressure was released from him, making the ground crack a tiny bit. And for number 2, the doctor. If he ever experiments on any person from Sumeru, he will be lucky to come back to your Archon in one piece. Naruto hissed as his sparks appeared in the air for a few moments. Naruto pressure vanished as the ground stopped cracking as he calmly walked back to Lumine and Payman. Relax. I said my bit while 2 of the harbingers were here, so they know I am serious. You can give up your precious gnosis in peace. Naruto told him cheerfully. Zhongli looked at him intently as the pressure was released and everyone got back on their knees. He put his hand out and Signora jolted forward to take it in her hands. The contract to end contracts is fulfilled. Now leave Liyue as there is no more contracts Morax has with the Fatui. Zhongli stated gravely as he crossed his arms. DCH. How arrogant of you. Fine, let's go. Chilled. We need to report to Her Majesty about our success. Signora scoffed as she turned around. Chilled gave her a look of disgust. You can go ahead. I have no intention of sharing a ride back with you. Chilled stated as Signora merely raised an eyebrow. As you wish. Try to come home soon. Her Majesty does not like tardiness. Signora commented as she walked off with a smug expression, even swaying her hips in triumph. DCH. She might be good looking, but she has a pretty bad attitude problem. Naruto noted with notable disgust as he glared at the door she left. Chilled smirked at him as he gave a mock bow. As much fun as this was, I do have to be on my way. Despite being really a victim in all this, I do not believe I will be welcome in Liyue for much longer. Ningyuang will likely not be passive in getting restrictions on my presence here. Chilled commented as he looked at Zhongli. Zhongli merely smiled and shook his head. I would be surprised if she didn't. Ningyuang has always been a fascinating and ambitious woman. She will no doubt take this opportunity to restrict the movements of the Fatui and harbingers as a result of this incident. Zhongli commented thoughtfully. Chilled laughed as he started to walk off. Thought as much, but hey, always appreciate your opinion, Zhongli, or Morax, or Rex Lapis, or whatever you call yourself. Chilled stated as he gave a quick bow to Zhongli, who nodded back. Chilled stopped when Lumine glared at him and Payman glared as well. For what it's worth, I did have fun in our short time in Liyue. That wasn't a lie. Also, what I had to do wasn't personal, and I did enjoy our fight regardless of what you think of me. Chilled explained as he bowed his head a bit. Just go. Lumine commanded as she still wasn't ready to be friends with Shield at the moment. The betrayal in her eyes was still too raw. Also you Naruto. I would like to have a fight someday. Anyone who can beat a god is worthy in my eyes. Shield stated cheerfully as Naruto gave him a dry look. I will keep that in mind thanks. Naruto told him stoically. Shield laughed at the expression as he walked off. Zhongli turned to Naruto with a smirk. A fair warning. Ningguang and the Kixing will likely wish to form closer relations with Sumeru now that it is known you represent Sumeru as Buer right-hand or diplomat. Do not be surprised if Ningguang or even Ganyu tries subtle methods to hint at a closer relationship with you. Zhongli noted as Naruto shrugged. I expected as much. Ningguang did try to offer me a job and subtly ask me to stay in Liyue. My answer is the same though. I will never betray Sumeru or Nahida. Naruto stated firmly although his expression did soften afterwards. Although I do like the ideas of the nations being more friendly with each other, so if Sumeru and Liyue can have better trade and relations from this incident. I would consider that a win in making lemonade from these lemons this incident caused. Naruto admitted cheerfully as his eyes twinkled with happiness. This got smiles from Paimon, Zhongli and Lumine. Zhongli added a nod of appreciation as well. Well said young Naruto. I know it seems like I no longer care or want to push my burden of archon onto the mortals, but that is not correct. Zhongli added as he looked into the sky as if looking at another world. I merely believe it is time for Liyue to not require Morax guiding them, or rather I want to believe this new generation will be able to live up and surpass the generations from before. Rex Lapis will still watch over them, but only as the mortal Zhongli not the god Morax. Zhongli explained as a look of pride appeared with a smile on his face. Lumine and Paimon were confused at his statement, while Naruto couldn't help a small smile on his face. So, despite how it looked he is like them huh? Naruto thought as an imagine of the third Hokage, his father and Jiraiya appeared in his mind making him remember their commitment of raising the new generation of Kohona. I guess I can understand your reasoning. It's like a father letting his children out of the nest as he trusts they will be able to move forward and make their own decisions. Naruto remarked as Paimon and Lumine looked at him curiously. You speak as if you had some experience. Lumine asked with her eyes looking at him oddly with a hint of nervousness. Huh? I don't have children myself. I just knew some old men who thought similar to what Zhongli is feeling, even though I don't think they would have passed on the mantle like he did. Naruto corrected her with a shrug. Lumine let out a sigh of relief, but she covered it up when Naruto looked at her with concern. Of course, those men haven't lived thousands of years like Morax has so I dunno if they would have made the same decision as he is doing now if they lived that long. Naruto admitted as Zhongli smiled. He didn't have to say I am an old man though. I like to consider myself in my prime. Zhongli thought with a sweat drop. Erosion is something that comes with age. Zhongli stated randomly before he covered his mouth as if he said something he didn't mean to. Erosion? Paimon asked floating up to Zhongli who shook his head. Never mind. Let's forget about it. Zhongli stated dismissively as he waved his hands and started to walk away. The group shrugged, but Naruto decided he needed to say one last thing. Hey Zhongli. Naruto yelled as Zhongli stopped and turned around. Yes? Zhongli asked him calmly. I know this was a test with you hoping the results were in Liyue's favor however do not do that again. Liyue isn't my people, but I still cannot bring myself to look the other way well people could get hurt, especially if someone like you is manipulating the situation to put them in harm's way. Naruto warned as he gave Zhongli a serious look. Naruto Lumine stated as she looked like she wanted to hold his hand to comfort him, but held back. Would Buer not do this sort of test if she wanted to let her people thrive without her? Zhongli asked as he gave Naruto an amused look. Lumine and Paimon took a step back when Naruto's eyes narrowed and he growled. Nahida would never do that. If she wanted someone else to be the leader of Sumeru she would be upfront about it. She would never test them that would put them in danger. Naruto declared as his eyes shone with anger and power. Zhongli took a minute as he observed Naruto before nodding his head. I suppose she wouldn't, although whether that changes in time remains to be seen. Zhongli agreed as Naruto bit his lip and nodded. I am glad my young friend has someone like you by her side. After what she has been through having someone who shares her values and is as devoted to her as you will set my heart at ease. Zhongli praised as he went up to Naruto. I promise this test will be the final one for Liyue. I am the mortal Zhongli now, but my word is still like stone. I will observe Liyue but only from the ground as a mortal. Zhongli proclaimed. Zhongli put his hand out as Naruto blinked. Naruto nodded and with a small grin shook hands. Very well. It's a pleasure to meet you Morax no Zhongli. Naruto amended as Zhongli gave him a nod. The pleasure is all mine Naruto Uzumaki. Zhongli replied back. Paimon was grinning at the display while Lumine was deep in thought. Zhongli and Naruto keep mentioning things happened to the Dendro Archon Buer, but I wonder happened. Even Signora implied her people did something to her that made Naruto almost go ballistic with rage. Maybe I will ask the Dendro Archon when I meet her in person. I don't think asking Naruto directly will be okay. It seems almost personal to him, but I can understand it. He seems to be truly devoted to Nahida, Lumine thought as she smiled to herself. After Naruto and Zhongli formally shook hands, Zhongli got up to leave, but not before giving one last message to the group. Ningguang told me to tell you if I saw you before she did. There will be a ceremony to honor Morax's death as 3 of Liyue heroes, she would like you 3 to be guests there. Zhongli told them as he calmly took in their unimpressed looks. That would sound way more impressive if Morax wasn't standing in front of us not dead. Payman pointed out dryly as Zhongli laughed. Ah, you see. Without my gnosis my powers have decreased to the point I am no longer the Morax of old. It is time for Morax to live as a mortal, so the god called Morax for all intents and purposes is dead. Zhongli claimed with a nod to himself. Naruto gave him a dry look before sighing. Right, if that is the story you want to go with, I won't stop you. However, does Ningguang know her god is still in Liyue despite his death? Naruto asked with his eyes slightly narrowed as Lumine also looked at Zhongli wondering the same thing. Zhongli looked at Naruto with interest. Perhaps your concern with Ningguang is due to an interest in courting her? It would help build a strong bond between Sumeru and Liyue if 2 of its most influential people are joined in marriage. Zhongli asked, but his teasing glint in his eyes showed he was not being very serious. Lumine turned to Naruto quickly, who to his credit looked unaffected by the accusation sent his way. Naruto did slap his forehead for the courting comment showing Zhongli age, but did look neutral to the statement itself. I could tell you to stop deflecting, but I will say this. Any sort of romance I have will not be some sort of political game for the nations. I will choose who I give my heart out to based on who I love. My concern is right now to question if you are honest enough to tell at least Ningguang and Keking the truth. They did fight to protect your city along with Lumine and Ganyu. Naruto stated plainly but firmly. Lumine silently let out a sigh of relief, much to Payman's confusion and Zhongli's amusement. Ah, young love. It truly is a wonderful thing to behold. It is not my place to dictate or stand in the way of what other people, especially someone as unique as Naruto, do for love. Zhongli thought to himself happily. Payman and Lumine focused back on Zhongli, who coughed and recomposed himself. Yes, I did tell Ningguang and Keking the truth. Keking is still rather dubious, but for the sake of Liyue accepts the truth, if only because I will not be interfering in the affairs of Liyue as a god anymore. Zhongli remarked thoughtfully. Ningguang was of course surprised but understanding. She may have thought herself clever, but I could see she already is planning to spin the incident to let the Kixing and mortals take over Liyue as the de facto leaders of the nation of Liyue without the guidance of Rex Lapis. Zhongli commented with a smile. Payman leaned over to Lumine and Naruto with a dry expression. Is it Payman, or do these gods have all these different names for themselves? Payman is Payman, but Zhongli is also Rex Lapis and Morax. Why do gods have to be so complicated? Payman whispered in a whine. This got laughs from Lumine and Naruto, while Zhongli just smiled calmly, as if he could tell what she was talking about. Alright then. As long as they are in the know, then I have no quarrels with you. Honesty is trait I value a lot, so if you are willing to be honest, then I can see us becoming friends. Naruto stated as Zhongli nodded in approval. Just before Zhongli could vanish, Naruto ran to him and stopped him. Wait. There is a favor I want to ask you. Naruto told him seriously. Zhongli raised an eyebrow but nodded. Ask away, young Naruto. I cannot promise anything, but I will hear you out. Zhongli told him. I want you to visit Nahida and Sumeru. She deserves at least one of her old friends to talk to after everything that has happened. Naruto told him, sternly referring to the Archons as Zhongli looked intently at Naruto. Is there something with my old friend you are not telling me? Zhongli asked him sharply, but Naruto didn't let up his gaze. As Buer suffered that much while we were separated. Zhongli thought to himself with a bit of guilt rising up. You can ask her directly if you go to Sumeru, it is not my tale to tell. Naruto insisted, respecting Nahida's right to tell the story directly. Zhongli looked at him for a moment before he chuckled. Ah, but young Naruto, I am retired. In my old age, travel to Sumeru would be far too much for my old bones. I would not be able to make the journey there in a leisurely manner. Zhongli claimed dramatically as he put his arms out. Naruto gave him such a flat and dry look Zhongli could not help but chuckle. Naruto leaned over so his mouth was right next to Zhongli's ear. If you are that old, then I can teleport to Sumeru anytime and bring you along. Naruto whispered sharply, with his tone clearly showing he did not believe Zhongli was that old. Zhongli looked at him in surprise, but Naruto shook his head. My powers are mine, and you hear me. Don't speak of them out loud. I will reveal them when I am ready. Naruto told him as Zhongli smiled and nodded. You have my word, my friend. Zhongli promised while Naruto nodded. I will think it over. Do also consider brining Barbados and Beelzebub along as well. It would be nice to have a reunion of the four of us. Zhongli commented before his expression grew grim. I don't think the way the Raiden Shogun is now that will be a possibility. Naruto stated sadly as Zhongli looked surprised but then nodded. Buer told you huh? Our old friend suffers but is not willing to let anyone help or heal her. Zhongli commented sadly. Naruto was silent but did see Zhongli give him a look as if he was pointing at him. Farewell my friends. I will be watching in the crowd of course, as Zhongli was not involved in the incident of Oshul after all. It would be odd if Zhongli was anywhere besides in the crowd as a normal citizen. Zhongli pointed out loudly as he walked away. Naruto, Lumine and Payman rolled their eyes but walked out as a group. What did you and Zhongli talk about? Lumine asked as Naruto just smiled. I just wanted him to visit Lady Buer in his spare time. They are old friends after all so they have some catching up to do. Naruto replied cheerfully as Lumine and Payman just shrugged. Payman thinks Zhongli acting like he had nothing to do with anything irritating, but Payman guesses from everyone else's perspective he is just a consultant who is bad with Mora. There is no way people would think he is Morax or Rex Lapis unless they already knew like us. Payman sighed as Lumine nodded. That's true. Everyone in Sumeru knows how my Archon looks like as she openly declared herself the Archon of Sumeru, but in Liyue people here only know Rex Lapis in the dragon form. The form that died in front of them not too long ago. I am sure the idea that Morax had a current human form let alone he is walking among them an absurd idea. Naruto mused looking around. Luckily the people of Liyue were far too busy to pay attention to the group, especially as Naruto hadn't even introduced himself formally to anyone yet. They did get a few hellos from the more friendly residents, but even they quickly went on their daily lives quickly. Naruto stopped for a moment as he looked deep in thought. Naruto? Lumine asked in concern as Naruto put a hand on his chin. Lumine? Do you hate Chilled for betraying you back in there? Naruto asked seriously as Payman was wide-eyed at his blunt question. Naruto? How can you ask that? You should know that Lumine is Payman snapped, but Lumine put a hand out to silence her. It's okay Payman. I can answer. Lumine assured her traveling companion with a weak smile. Payman nodded as Naruto gave her a look of sympathy. Lumine thought for a few minutes deep in thought. I don't hate him, but I haven't forgotten what he did. His actions could have killed me and destroyed Liyue if you didn't show up. Lumine stated firmly, but her eyes did soften when she said the last part. Her eyes showed a coolness when referring to Chilled, but a deep admiration when she looked at Naruto. Lumine? Payman stated sadly as she hovered in the air. Naruto shockingly smiled kindly at her as he looked into the sky as if seeing past the clouds themselves. You're kinder than you believe. Honestly, I feel a lot of people would hate someone if they were betrayed like Chilled did to you. Naruto mused with a look of reminiscence before he shook his head. Lumine blinked at the compliment before she gave Naruto a curious expression. What about you? Do you think I forgive him? Lumine asked as she tried to look into Naruto's eyes to judge his reaction. To her surprise all she saw was understanding in those sky blue eyes. I think Chilled's actions were extreme in the sense it could have caused a lot of pain and loss of life if Oshul wasn't stopped. Naruto stated firmly before he sighed. However, I do understand to Chilled the harbinger's actions to gather the gnosis is a job for him. He probably doesn't agree with all their methods, but he will do his job because he needs to. He is not like Signora who relishes in the pain and suffering her actions cause. They might be part of the same organization, but they have different ideas on how to do it. Naruto stated softly. Lumine thought it over but was indecisive. Look, I am not going to command you forgive him or tell you hating him is the right thing. I just giving you my opinion on what happened. How you feel is up to you. You should just follow what your heart feels rather than going by another person's belief. Naruto assured her with a smile. Lumine nodded in thanks as Naruto patted her on the shoulder for a moment. Payman smiled at her two friends before she started to feel tired. Payman is glad Naruto is not pushing his opinion onto Lumine. He really is a nice guy. Payman thought to herself. Payman thinks that talk about the gods was super exciting. Payman is getting tired. Payman stated as she let out a yawn and rubbed her eyes. Lumine giggled but nodded as well. Ningyuang did say she did reserve us rooms, so I think we might as well use them before Ningyuang's ceremony. Lumine suggested as Payman's eyes glowed and shone brightly. Ain't no sleeping outside tonight. Payman cheered as Lumine laughed and playfully rolled her eyes. Payman. You know we can't use Mora every night for a warm bed. That is why we have tents. Lumine chided as Payman stuck her tongue out at the blonde. Lumine and Payman started to walk off before Payman noticed Naruto was still in his original spot with a tentative look. Naruto? Are you coming? Ningyuang did say she saved a room for you too. Payman asked with a hint of concern as Naruto smiled. Go ahead. I just have some business in Liyue I want finished today. I will meet up with you both later. I will find the place afterwards. Naruto explained as he waved them off. Lumine and Payman looked at each before shrugging and walking off, chatting happily in what would be called girl talk. Naruto smiled at them before he walked in a different direction. Now where is Wanman restaurant? I hear it's one of the best restaurants in Liyue. Naruto wondered as he looked across the streets with a hand over his chin in wonder. Oh, you are looking for Wanman restaurant? It's over there, mister. A young boy told him cheerfully as he pointed Naruto in the correct way. Thank you. I appreciate it. Naruto stated gratefully as he dropped some more into the young boy's hand. The boy's eyes shone as he shouted happily and ran off, probably to his parents, as Naruto walked in the correct way. He soon arrived at Wanman restaurant as he gave a hum of approval. Excuse me. I am looking for the head chef of Wanman restaurant. Naruto shouted into the restaurant, hoping for response. Humming. A male voice replied back as the man walked out with a smile. Hello. I am Chef Mao. I run the restaurant, although if you are looking for the head chef, it's my daughter Zhongli. Mao greeted as he looked at Naruto with interest. Naruto nodded his head as he extended a hand, which Chef Mao accepted. Hello, I am Naruto. I am a diplomat from Sumeru and I would like to suggest hire Wanman restaurant for a certain job. Naruto explained before he turned around when he heard an excited chirp. Job? If you want the best catering in Liyue, you came to the right place. An excited girl voice chirped as Naruto looked to see a shorter girl who was roughly the same height as Lumine. The girl had pale skin with golden eyes and black hair tied up in bobs reminiscent of a panda. She wore an one-piece brown and golden leotard that ended on her lower thighs. She wore red ribbons on her hips that seemed to resemble a skirt, with them being longer in the back compared to the front. She fingerless brown gloves and brown boots that were ankle-high, showing a fair amount of her skin on her legs. The girl was grinning ear to ear until Chef Mao frowned at her. Zhongli. I taught you better than that. You introduce yourself before promoting the restaurant. Naruto is a guest, so he deserves your manners. Chef Mao chided her as Zhongli rubbed her cheek in embarrassment. Sorry, father. Zhongli apologized before she took a deep breath to calm herself. Hello. I am Zhongli, the head chef of Wanman restaurant. I apologize for my enthusiasm from before. Zhongli greeted calmly as she extended a hand out. Naruto grinned and shook her hand as well. No need to worry. I understand. Now for my proposal. Naruto stated as both Zhongli and Chef Mao leaned in to listen. I really need your restaurant's facilities, as this will be a massive order, or rather feast. Naruto stated as he wrote down on a piece of paper what he was planning. Chef Mao and Zhongli looked at the paper with wide eyes as they looked at Naruto in shock. An order of this size would take tons of time of preparation and supplies. There is no way we could possibly cook all this in such a time frame. Chef Mao exclaimed as Zhongli nodded. I am sorry, but as good as we are, we do not have remotely enough supplies to create an order this big. Zhongli admitted with sadness. To their shock, Naruto grinned as he crossed his arms. You don't have to worry about supplier preparations. That part I got covered. I just need the space and facilities to cook. Naruto explained before he hummed. You help cooking, it would be helpful, but it is not the absolute necessary. Naruto commented after a moment. Chef Mao and Zhongli looked at the blonde skeptically. You have all this stuff available. The quantity needed would suggest you had this for a while, but unless you could somehow transport these supplies rapidly, you would have issues with spoilage from the distance between Sumeru and Liyue. Chef Mao commented with narrowed eyes. Zhongli was taken back when Naruto grinned turned smug as he smiled, revealing his white teeth. Let me show you something that Sumeru has developed over the last year. It's still in development, but I think this will assuage your concerns. Naruto stated as he had a scroll in hand that he took out of his pocket. Naruto other hand had a green glow as Chef Mao, and Zhongli eyes shone as there was a bright light that briefly enveloped the restaurant. Is this the power of Dendro? Zhongli chanted in awe. How can this be possible? Chef Mao said with wide eyes. Naruto just smirked with amusement. Oh, you know of Dendro, huh? Well, let me show you the power of Buer and I. Naruto stated as Chef Mao and Zhongli jaws dropped at what they saw. Some time later. These beds are so comfortable. Payman could sleep here forever. Payman moaned as she snuggled into her bed. Much to Lumine and Payman's surprise, Lumine and Payman did share a room, but they got separate beds. This made Payman bouncing in their air as she got a massive bed for herself, and Lumine was surprised but pleased. I was sure that Ningguang, to be practical, would have I and Payman shared a bed and to have single bedroom rooms. To think she would go the distance. I wonder if Naruto's room will have 2 beds. Lumine thought to herself before a blush rose on her cheeks. I wonder if Naruto will let me sleep in his room. Or bed, Lumine thought to herself absent-mindedly. Lumine. I am not here to sleep in Naruto's room or bed. I am sure it would be comfortable, but that is not why I am here. Lumine scolded herself as her blush threatened to turn into steam. Despite her best efforts, a thought of sleeping next to Naruto kept creeping into her mind as they cuddled and snuggled together. They wouldn't have made love yet in her dream, but would be close enough to sleep in the same bed with their clothes on. Almost like boyfriend and girlfriend who were waiting and not making love yet. Luckily for Lumine, Payman was having too much fun in her bed to pay Lumine much if any attention. Maybe I should take a shower. It's been a while since we have been in a city long enough to take a hot shower. Lumine thought, shaking her head. Luckily or unluckily depending on who you were, there was a knock on the door that snapped Lumine and Payman out of their daydreams. Who is it? Lumine asked loudly. It's just me. Can I come in? You both decent? Naruto voice asked cheerfully as he waited outside the door. Lumine sighed in relief and was about to answer, but Payman got a devious look on her face. Stop, Lumine. Put your dress back on. Payman shouted as Lumine looked back at Payman with a look of shock. What are you saying? Lumine asked with her face red. Lumine. It's not right to be undressing now. Naruto is right outside. Payman claimed as her smile grew bigger and bigger the more Lumine blushed. Lumine undressing. Now Naruto thought as his face had a slight red hue as he leaned against the wall next to the door. Should I come back later? Naruto asked awkwardly through the door. Both Payman and Lumine could hear his embarrassment, which despite Lumine's cheeks having a red hue as well made them amused. Naruto's eye twitched when he heard the girls' giggles along with Payman heaving. You were joking, right? Naruto asked with a hint of annoyance as he crossed his arms and a frown could be seen. You took it so seriously. Payman means she meant it as a joke, but you acted like it was taboo to walk in. Payman laughed as she floated in the air and held her stomach. Lumine giggled as well, albeit much softer than Payman, and she did look a tad bad as she covered her lips with her hand. To be frank, Payman played a prank on me too as I wasn't changing. It was all Payman's fault and idea. Lumine explained as she did stop her giggles and sent a small pout at Payman. Payman crossed her arms and looked away. HMPH. At least you weren't in a towel after taking a shower or bath. Payman could have invited Naruto in without telling you. Payman noted before she got devious. Then that would be funny. Payman would laugh so hard if Naruto turned red to seeing you in a towel and you turning red from him seeing you. Payman remarked before she laughed loudly again. Payman. Lumine shouted as she turned bright red of the idea of that happening. That would be so embarrassing. I'm not exactly as young as I look, but I haven't let anyone see me like that. There is a reason this dress covers so much. I couldn't stand it if showed that much skin. Lumine thought in horror as steam started to come from her head. AN3. Would Naruto like that though? Lumine thought as she imagined for a moment Naruto accidentally seeing her like that and showering her with affection afterwards. Okay, that is the wrong way to see that, Lumine realized as she shook her head to clear it of those thoughts. Little did the girls now Naruto was also getting rather embarrassed at the thought. Lumine in a towel. Naruto thought as despite his best efforts that imagine appeared in his mind. Naruto imagination. Naruto. Eep. Please don't look. Lumine shouted as she turned red holding her towel with one hand and the other hand covered her red cheeks. Lumine was wearing a single white towel that was big enough to cover her most private areas but was not big enough to cover everything. A hint of her creamy cleavage could be seen as she couldn't raise the towel enough to cover everything as the towel was already riding from her lower hips. Hence Naruto could see her shoulders, neckline and creamy skin. Lumine's pale cheeks were highlighted even more with her red blush and she looked rather cute and beautiful being highlighted. She for some reason had discarded her white boots and was wearing rather skimpy blue heels that showed off her toes. Without anything below her towel and to her heels, her long legs were especially highlighted and shown off. Hence Lumine looked really good in Naruto's opinion, especially with her hair wet from her shower. Lumine, Naruto shouted as he tried to avert his eyes at her lack of modesty, but a quick glimpse sealed her figure in his mind forever. Please don't judge me, Naruto, there was only one towel in the room and I never let anyone see me like this before. Lumine told him, shyly looking cutely at the floor with her cheeks red as she moved slightly back and forth. Back to reality. Naruto shook his head as his face lost the embarrassment. That little fairy. Humph. Does she get enjoyment from embarrassing the people around her? Naruto thought sourly as he tried to not see Lumine in that way, especially as they didn't know each other that well. I will drop by later. Naruto declared as he started to walk off, deciding even the slim chance of Payman actually being right would not be worth wrecking his friendship with Lumine. Lumine sent a glare at Payman, who to her credit did look a tad bad. Wait. Payman was kidding. Lumine shouted as she ran up to the door and opened it. Naruto turned around and sighed in relief to see Lumine in her normal white dress. I was just wondering if you liked your room. I know Ningguang said she would be paying for it, but I got to admit my room is something I thought only distinguished political guests would have. Naruto admitted as he walked in the room with Lumine closing the door behind it. Payman thinks it's great. It has its own stove and fridge and sink. Payman cheered as she flew over to show off the kitchen part of the room. Naruto chuckled and nodded. My room does too. I just have a single king bed which is more than fine for me. I might have to take a shower later on. It wouldn't send the right message if the diplomat of Sumeru didn't have clean hygiene, especially for an event in Liyue. Naruto joked. Eamon laughed out loud when Lumine hid a small smile. I too enjoy the room. We usually traveling on the road so we don't usually get to stay in places like this. I got to admit it is rather nice just to rest in an actual bed instead of a sleeping bag. Lumine admitted as Paimon nodded furiously. Naruto nodded as he sat in a nearby comfy chair while Lumine and Paimon were sitting on their beds. So, do you have any plans after the ceremony? Do you plan to stay in Liyue for a while or go on to a new region? Naruto asked. Paimon and Lumine looked at each blinking as if just realizing for the first time their time in Liyue was coming to a close. Do we have a plan? Lumine whispered to Paimon as they huddled up close together. Paimon looked around and looked guiltily at the beds and kitchen. I mean, would it be the worst thing to stay here? Ningguang did say she would be paying for these rooms any time we stayed here. Paimon suggested as Lumine's eyes widened in disbelief. Paimon? Lumine whispered sharply as Paimon shrugged her shoulders. You do realize mooching off Ningguang isn't exactly the best way to advance your journey. Naruto told them flatly as his eyes was deadpan. Beep. You heard us. Paimon shouted as her and Lumine jumped in surprise. You think you were quiet but not quiet enough for me to not to hear. Naruto commented with a shrug. Lumine and Paimon rubbed their heads nervously in embarrassment. If you want my opinion, I wouldn't suggest going to Inazuma right now. Naruto warned as the two females looked at him in confusion. Why? Is the Electro Archon not a nice person? Paimon asked nervously as Naruto's expression grew grim. I haven't met her personally as have stayed in Sumeru, but I can tell you what is pretty well-known knowledge. The Electro Archon is the god of eternity as that is her heavenly principle in the same way Mondstadt has the god of freedom, Liyue has or rather had the god of contracts, and Sumeru has the god of knowledge. Naruto remarked as Lumine and Paimon nodded along. The Electro Archon name is Beelzebul, but to her people she is the almighty shogun. Unlike Barbados and Morax, Beelzebul lives and openly rules her people with an iron fist. There is no doubt who she is. Naruto commented as Lumine gulped. So is Beelzebul or the almighty shogun someone who is strict? Lumine asked nervously. Being the god of eternity, she believes that things staying constantly the same as eternity. Recently she has made a change to the policies to Inazuma. A vision hunt degree so to speak. Naruto hummed as Paimon and Lumine gasped. Vision hunt degree? How exactly do you hunt visions down? Paimon yelled in fear as Naruto gave her a sad smile. From what I understand the top human leaders and soldiers in Inazuma round known vision wielders and take their visions one at a time. If they resist, they are arrested and have their visions removed before getting released. It's rather a sad affair if I am speaking frankly. Naruto commented with a sigh. Why on earth would a god want to take visions? Aren't they good things? Lumine asked sharply as Naruto shrugged. Who knows? I guess perhaps the Electro Archon thinks that visions go against the idea of eternity. I guess you would have to ask the almighty shogun herself to get an answer. Naruto suggested as he looked thoughtful. Paimon had a nervous smile before a light bulb lit up on her face. Hey. You both don't have visions, right? So, you both would be okay, right? Paimon asked brightly, but Naruto shook his head. It's not just them taking visions that makes Inazuma so dangerous. The almighty shogun has also closed Inazuma borders at the moment, so they will very carefully screen people coming into Inazuma. Travelers are basically not welcome to their lands. Naruto informed them. Eternity means different things for different people after all. So, this might be absurd to us, but to the Electro Archon, this might be her definition of eternity. Naruto added before they could retort. Just like Nahida believes knowledge should be shared and accepted, while the sages believe knowledge should be controlled and hoarded. Naruto thought bitterly. The Electro Archon sounds. Paranoid Paimon shouted, but she paused when she saw Naruto and Lumine giving her a look. She seems intense, Lumine added after a moment of concentration. Naruto smiled in amusement but nodded. She is certainly a god to fear. Just make sure to keep anything really negative to yourself, especially if you in Inazuma. Despite what we think her people truly worship her, even if a minority did disagree with her, they probably wouldn't speak out either. Naruto warned as he gave a tired smile. You okay, Naruto? Lumine asked with a concerned look as Naruto waved her off. Sorry, it's just been a long day. I think we should call it. Ningguang's ceremony will be soon, so I think we should get some rest. Who knows? Maybe we will have to make a speech. Naruto suggested as he stretched. Paimon yawned and Lumine blinked slowly as they nodded in agreement. Paimon agrees. Paimon should get some shut-eye and rest in this comfy bed. Paimon stated happily as she flew into her pillow. Lumine waved to Naruto, who waved back. Good night, Naruto. Lumine told him warmly as Naruto walked away. Good night, Lumine. Sleep tight, Paimon. Naruto told them as he closed the door behind him. I will take a shower tomorrow. tonight is just sleeping. Lumine decided as she closed her eyes and let dreams take over. Should I make my report to Nahida in my dreams or will she call me? I guess if nothing happens tonight I will call her afterwards. Naruto thought to himself with a nod as he entered his own room. Naruto decided to take a quick shower and got his spare change of clothes out of his scroll. He let out a sigh of relief as he closed his eyes. For Naruto, his sleep was dreamless, showing that Nahida did not contact him like he believed. The next day after, Lumine took a warm shower and luckily did not have an incident of Naruto walking in on her by accident. The group reunited before they were led by excited Liyue residents to the center where Ningguang, Ganyu, Keqing and several Mililith soldiers were standing in the center. They appeared ready to make a speech. Fellow residents of Liyue. First of all, I would like to tell you the incident involving Oshul has been resolved. Thank you for your courage and patience while we resolved this issue and keeping your calm. Ningguang announced to the cheers of the residents. Lumine and Naruto nodded as they clapped as well, while Payman was cheering along with the crowd. She is a good public speaker. She knows what to say to control or rather win the crowd over to her side. Naruto remarked as Lumine nodded. The blondes winced when several members of the crowd glared at them and started to mumble for them to pipe down. Ningguang saw this and resisted, having her eye twitched at her honored guests being chastised. She was smart enough to use this to her advantage. Ah. Perfect timing. Would Naruto, Uzumaki, Lumine and Payman step up here please? Ningguang asked, pointing to the three of them. Lumine, Naruto and Payman blinked and shrugged as they walked forward with the crowd parting in shock and surprise. Lady Ningguang knows them. They are that important. I thought they were just tourists. Several voices whispered rather loudly. Payman looked rather smug at the attention she was been given by the beautiful and important Ningguang. Lumine and Naruto looked a tad embarrassed but took it in stride. Once the three of them got to the center stage, Ganyu and Keqing waved at them and smiled. This got even more excited chattering from the crowd as Ganyu and Keqing's importance to Liyue was well known, making the appeal of the three travelers even more interesting. Ningguang stood in between Lumine and Naruto, putting a hand on each of their shoulders, while Payman hovered over Lumine's head. Forgive them. They do not know your importance yet, but I promise things will change soon. Ningguang whispered to the three of them. Payman huffed while Lumine and Naruto tried to slip away. However, despite her slender appearance, they discovered Ningguang had a serious strong grip as she tightened briefly on their shoulders. You are not trying to escape before the speech is done, correct? I feel that would a bit rude, do you not agree? Ningguang asked politely but with a hidden undertone of danger. Lumine and Payman nodded their head rapidly, starting to sweat. Naruto calmly nodded but did shudder briefly. Beautiful, tall, busty, curvy, and has a commanding aura. She almost reminds me of Tsunade Bachan, besides this being her real age and not a jutsu thing. Naruto thought to himself with a sweat drop. Tsunade Bachan is kinda shallow for hiding the fact she is 50, but I guess it does make it easier for her to get people, especially men, to say yes to her without smashing them through walls. Naruto added with Kurama snickering. But you are my honored guests and I do wish to give my appreciations in person. Ningguang whispered with an eerie smile before a kind look appeared on her beautiful face. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce the travelers Lumine and Payman. They were here alongside myself, Keqing, Ganyu, the White Adepti and the brave Mililith fighting against Oshul during that terrible time. Ningguang announced as Naruto clapped with the crowd as he grinned at Payman and Lumine. Payman was floating everywhere with giant grin as she flew around and waved to the audience. The crowd was clapping and pointing at them excitedly. She looked so young. That fairy looked so cute. I can't believe they were fighting alongside our brave leaders. Were some of the cries of excitement from the crowd. This went on for a few minutes as even Ganyu and Keqing gave nods of appreciation to Lumine and Payman. People of Liyue. I know you would like to know who this gentleman beside me is. Why he is so special. Well, he, Ningguang announced as she gestured to Naruto, who stepped forward. Allow me, Lady Ningguang. Naruto requested as Ningguang sighed but nodded. People of Liyue. I am Naruto Uzumaki. I am a diplomat and advisor to Lady Buer of Sumeru. The Dendro Archon asked me to come here on her behalf. Naruto stated modestly. The crowd was more confused than anything else as they politely clapped, but it was notably more muted and scattered than when they were cheering for Payman and Lumine. Ganyu and Keqing were surprised that Naruto wasn't bringing up his role in the death of Oshul as they looked at Ningguang, who was frowning at Naruto, who notably was not looking in their direction. Naruto instead was just rubbing his head back and smiling nervously as if trying to hide himself as much as possible. Why is there some diplomat from Sumeru here? I don't think he really has done anything to stand up there with Lady Ganyu, Lady Keqing, Lady Ningguang and those heroes. He doesn't really seem like anything special. Were the loud whispers said about Naruto. This made Lumine and Payman get annoyed, but Naruto shook his head. It's better this way. Naruto mouthed, showing he was okay getting some disrespect sent his way. Naruto was about to walk off stage, but Ningguang caught up to him and grabbed his wrist gently before intertwining his hand with hers. "How modest of you, Naruto Uzumaki." Ningguang told him with a warm smile as Naruto sent her a quick warning glare. How is someone like him getting this close and personal with Lady Ningguang? Who does he think he is? He should be groveling on his feet. That is Lady Ningguang. Or more loud whispers as once again Naruto ignored them, but Ningguang had to hold herself back from yelling at her people for their ignorant disrespect of Liyue and her hero. "May I have your attention please?" Ningguang asked in her elegant voice, but Naruto could hear a tint of annoyance in her voice that barely was restrained. "Yes, Lady Ningguang." "Of course," rang out the crowd before they looked eagerly at her with trust and glee. Despite not being the arch-in, Ningguang is pretty popular. I guess she really earned the people trust, and her good looks probably don't hurt her appeal either. Naruto thought to himself with respect. Naruto of Sumeru has left one big detail out I believe needs to be spoken. Ningguang stated as the crowd were confused but interested. Naruto looked at her with a glare, but Ningguang only smirked as she looked challenging at him. Naruto Uzumaki is the man who slayed Oshul the ancient sea god on his own. He is the true hero of Liyue, and we owe him our lives and gratitude. Ningguang announced loudly with pride in her voice. She looked at Naruto who was gaping at her with her eyes showing notable interest and a hint of lust. Damn it, this is not what I wanted. I only told the Adepti, Ningguang, Ganyu, Kiking, Lumine and Payment to build up trust. It's not like I could hide from Zhongli either. Naruto thought in worry. Lumine and Payment were openly cheering at him and clapping with the crowd was gaping looking at Naruto and Ningguang like they grew a second head. Oh my. So, my dear Naruto is even more impressive than I thought. I must find a way to show my appreciation as if Liyue was destroyed, then there would be no business. Of course, my passing would also be tragic. Hyuda chirped with her eyes glittering with interest and lust as she gazed at Naruto happily. Zhongli was standing next to Hyuda and looked down at his director with an amused smirk before he nodded to himself. Naruto Uzumaki does seem rather interesting. I dare say even Morax would be pleased with someone like him protecting his lands. Zhongli noted with a smile. Hyuda looked over her consultant before a huge grin appeared on her face. She leaned in and gestured for Zhongli to squat down to her level. When you say things like that, Mr. Zhongli, it almost confirms my suspicions that you and Adepti. Hyuda whispered before she giggled. Don't worry though. I promise I will keep it a secret. You are just Mr. Zhongli and not a big shot, right? Hyuda whispered with a teasing smile and wink. Whatever you say, director. Zhongli told her neutrally as Hyuda once again giggled at his calm face. The crowd after getting over their shock turned to outrage as they pointed at Naruto with angry expressions. That can't be true. A single mortal killing a god. That's impossible. Lady Ningguang must have been tricked. He is lying. The crowd shouted as Lumine and Payment stepped out of the crowd as they started to advance towards Naruto who looked calm. To be honest, I really don't care if they believe me or not, but I thought they would at least believe Ningguang. Naruto thought dryly. Ningguang was about to try to calm the crowd down, but Naruto and Lumine shuddered as they appeared to sense a buildup of cold energy. This is Syro power or rather a vision. Naruto mumbled to himself as he looked around. The crowd yelped with several of them forced to leap back. There was an arrow shot in front of them that exploded leaving a crater full of ice. Enough. I will not hear this. Ganyu usually calm voice was full of fury as her eyes seemed to glow with power. Lady Ganyu? Kiking asked with wide eyes. Stay out of this, Kiking. This one is mine. Ganyu warned her as Kiking gulped but nodded. Lady Ganyu? The crowd asked with shock at the beautiful nearly eternal secretary of the Liyue. Kiking was absolutely furious. Ganyu had her bow out with one hand and the other hand was glowing with Syro power as her vision was humming and glowing with power. I have always tried to give humanity and mortals the benefit of the doubt. I refuse to believe that humans would never learn and always be fools. Most of the Adepti have been trying to convince me to leave Liyue and observe from afar like them. I have refused as I believe in mortals and been watching them for so long. What feels like brief moments as new humans have come and left over the years. Ganyu stated as she closed her eyes in sorrow. Ganyu, Naruto whispered as he felt his empathy for her grow as he could almost hear and sense her loneliness in her voice and expression. However, seeing you here denying a truth just because you think it's uncomfortable or impossible has made me start to lose my faith. Ganyu admitted as her eyes grew dark. Lady Ganyu? Please forgive us. We just cannot understand how someone like him could actually do what you and Adepti couldn't. Someone explained as they looked at Ganyu with admiration but also fear. We weren't there. We were outmatched and I truly believed it was our end. Along with the end of Liyue itself which has endured for over 3,700 years. Ganyu stated as her bow vanished and she opened her eyes which were full of fear. She is right. I did not believe we would be still standing here when Oshul fired an attack that would have killed us all, and then he would be free to get his revenge on Liyue itself. Ningguang added as her expression was grim. The crowd was silent as they looked between Ningguang and Ganyu with wide eyes. However, like a miracle from the heavens itself, he appeared out of nowhere and changed the entire fight. He was so powerful I was in awe, but his presence was so calming I felt like I could put my back against him and fight with him in any fight. Ganyu stated as she looked at Naruto, who was looking a bit uncomfortable when everyone was looking at him. You don't need to call it a miracle, more like helping out. Naruto tried to state as he rubbed his head. Peking put her hands on her hips as she stared at Naruto with annoyance. TCH. Just take the compliment. You don't understand how close Liyue was to destruction. A miracle is calling it lightly. We would have been destroyed if you didn't show up. You showed powers and skills that made us feel small in comparison. Even the Adepti could not help but be in awe of your powers. You slayed a god that even our Archon could only seal away. Peking pointed out before a smile appeared on her face as his eyes seemed to glisten with gratitude. So on behalf of the Kixing and Liyue itself. You have our thanks, Naruto Uzumaki, the savior of Liyue. You will always be welcome in Liyue and we will be in your debt. Peking told him as she bowed. All hail Naruto Uzumaki. Ningguang commanded as she bowed as well, kneeling on the ground with her head bent down. No, from this day onwards your deeds in saving Liyue will be recorded for all time. Ganyu added as she knelt down and bowed as well. The residents of Liyue were in awe, but the fact that 3 of the Kixing, including Ganyu who was part Adepti, were singing the praises of Naruto Uzumaki confirmed the story of his heroism. Thank you Naruto Uzumaki. Liyue is in your debt. The crowd shouted as they knelt down like the 3 ladies from the Kixing. One by one each person from Liyue knelt down to show their gratitude towards Naruto, who looked a bit embarrassed at the attention. Yes, many thanks Naruto. You protected Liyue well and I will never forget it. Zhongli thought as he knelt as well, both as part of his mortal disguise as Zhongli and his genuine gratitude. I feel many women will try to snatch up Naruto, huh? He is quite the catch, including to me. Yudao whispered as she knelt as well, but had a cheerful expression on her face. Naruto Uzumaki, huh? Sounds like quite an amazing man. I wonder if he would like to come to one of my shows. It's the least I can do for Liyue savior. A young woman called Yunjin thought as she knelt as well. She was a beautiful young woman with fair skin, red eyes and hip-length black hair with purple highlights. Soon everyone living in Liyue Harbor was bowing down to Naruto except Lumine and Payman. Are we supposed to bow too? Payman knows we don't live in Liyue, but he did save our lives too. Payman whispered to Lumine, who was also confused. Lumine and Payman looked at Naruto as Lumine started to bend her knees. Please don't. I am embarrassed now that these people are bowing to me. I don't need my friends to bow to me too. Naruto mouthed out, or at least that is what Lumine thought he said based on reading his lips. Far away the Adepti known as Cloud Retainer was watching the events with interest, along with her disciple Shen. That one is both dangerous and an asset to Liyue. Watch for him carefully, Shen. Cloud Retainer told Shen with a calm expression. Is that because he slayed a god you were unable to defeat? Shen asked, emotionless with her face blank and flat. Shen was a gorgeous tall young woman with fair skin and with unique long silvery white hair. A majority of her long hair was tied as a long braid that flowed down her back, tied with red cord and bow that held her Syro vision. The rest of her hair framed her beautiful face and covered her right eye, giving her a cool but mysterious look. She was wearing notable black backless bodysuit that hugged every curve of her well-developed body. Despite her stunning good looks, Shen's expression was completely indifferent, as if she has no emotions, or if her emotions were suppressed to the extreme. Cloud Retainer resisted sighing and looking annoyed at her disciple, knowing that it was not Shen's fault for her blunt attitude. Child. Despite being mortal, his powers seem to rival or possibly surpass the Archon's. He is one to watch out for, although he does appear to have unbound amount of kindness for all. Cloud Retainer remarked as she looked carefully at Shen for her response. So he is wanted, huh? He has people he cares for and people care about him. Is that what it means to be powerful? Shen asked as her face seemed to go sad for a moment before turning emotionless once again, as if a switch had turned on. Cloud Retainer sighed as she looked at Shen sadly. That is not what I meant, Shen. Perhaps a meeting with him in the future will clear things up for you, child. Cloud Retainer suggested as they continued to watch from the sidelines. If that is what Master wants, then I shall do it. The one called Naruto Uzumaki I shall meet and observe. Shen promised as she bowed her head as she continued to watch the scene unfold. Naruto let them sit on their knees for about 20 seconds before he coughed, getting everyone attention. Look, I will be honest. I didn't kill Oshul to be praised. Sumeru is my priority and home. Nothing will change that. Naruto told them bluntly as the crowd looked at him in surprise. Wow, Payman thinks Naruto is telling them Liyue doesn't matter very much to him. Payman thought dryly. I came here because Lady Buer sensed something was going to happen. I came under her orders for whatever was going to happen. However, I do think the people here are good people and deserve to live. Unless Lady Buer told me explicitly not to interfere, I would have probably helped you out regardless as you deserve to live. Naruto told them honestly with his sincerity clear as he used his arms to show he meant all of Liyue. Sheesh. He claims we aren't his people, but I could see people putting him on the same level as us due to his actions. Keqing whispered to Ganyu, but she had a fond smile on her face. Well, he deserves the highest honors and respect. He saved our entire country from destruction all on his own. Ganyu giggled but did have a look of admiration of her face. We cannot and will not make this man our enemy. He could possibly be Liyue's greatest ally. Ningguang beepized silently. For a minute nobody spoke as Lumine and Payman held their breath waiting for the crowd reactions. All of a sudden one person started clapping, which was Zhongli, and quickly followed by Hudao, who was grinning. Then the crowd starting to clap in unison as well as the children were outright jumping in admiration for the whiskered blonde. Ningguang walked up to Naruto as she stood next to him and smiled. Well said, Naruto Uzumaki. No, I swear on my name and Liyue that as long as I live Liyue will always welcome you. Sumeru might be your home, but Liyue will welcome you as one of ours forever. Ningguang announced as the crowd went wild. This also includes Payman and Lumine who fought alongside us as well. Ningguang added as Lumine and Payman stood with them as the crowd continued to clap. Naruto sighed but waved with a grateful smile. After a few minutes Ningguang raised her hand for silence. Now for somber news. Our Lord and God the Almighty Rex Lapis has passed on. He now resides in the realm where all gods rest. He might be no longer our god, but his city and country still stands. Ningguang stated as the crowd bowed their heads for their lost god. He has fulfilled his last contract and left his country to all of us now. It is our responsibility to continue the land of contracts even without his guidance. Ningguang commented before her eyes gained resolve. I swear on Morax's name that the Qixing will guide Liyue to a new age without a god. The land of contracts will continue for many years to come. So, I ask you to put your trust in us and in return we will forge the path to the future. Ningguang asked as she bowed her head. To show their resolve Ganyu and Keqing also bowed their heads to the people of Liyue. Zhongli was silently watching this over with a neutral expression. Lady Ningguang. Lady Ganyu. Lady Keqing. The Qixing. We trust you. We will endure and thrive. To the new Liyue. The crowd yelled as Ningguang smiled as she raised her head. Well, that a smooth transition of power. For all intents and purposes, the Qixing are now the rulers of Liyue. Just as Zhongli predicted. It must be what Morax wanted with that test. Even though I slayed Oshul, the fact that the Qixing and Adepti came together has cemented the trust of the people of Liyue to the Qixing forever. Naruto thought as he nodded. Well done, Ningguang. You seem to truly love this country and should be able to rule it or at least guide it fairly. I wonder how many suitors she will have for her hand in marriage. To be married to a woman like Ningguang. That would be a lucky guy. Naruto joked as he looked at her from the corner of his eyes. He seems unable to be swayed by my body or status like most men. So, seduction probably won't be the path to gain his trust. Friendship and showing him my resolve to make Liyue a place her people can live in peace. Ningguang thought as she looked at Naruto out of the corner of her eye. From a discreet street a rather busty and beautiful woman smirked. So Ningguang has earned the trust of the people through her words. Well, she was always the better politician and face of leadership than I. She can be the light while I walk in the shadows. That is how we have always been after all. Yellen whispered as she stretched her arms. This caused her bountiful chest to bounce as once again Yellen had back problems due to her bust. Yellen was a very beautiful woman who appeared roughly the same age physically as Ningguang. Yellen had pale skin with light emerald eyes. She had dark blue hair that was short to her shoulders in a somewhat asymmetrical harem style. She wore a blue coat over her shoulders but didn't button it, revealing her dark bodysuit. Her bodysuit was open in the front over her chest, revealing her black brassiere and allowing her large chest to breathe. She also wore white blue tipped earrings on both ears resembling teardrops. The bodysuit included boots that covered her entire legs with a zipper running along the side of it. The boots connected to her dark high heels. She wore her hydrovision along the zipper and small patch of exposed skin on her, also wore a single sleeve on her right arm that went up to her shoulder but left the shoulder exposed. On her left arm she didn't wear anything except 3 bracelets with different designs. The bodysuit was backless showing her well-toned back, but that was usually covered by her coat unless she was running. Yellen gave a critical look at Lumine and Payman as she nodded to herself. Those two are interesting. They are travelers who have gained a name in Mondstadt and now have the favor of Liyue as well. Yellen mused. Yellen then looked at Naruto as she put her hand under her chin and the other hand on her hip. Naruto Uzumaki is the real mystery though. Like Ningguang, information about him is very scarce until his actions with Oshul. I would love to find out more about him, but I know Ningyuang would not want me to jeopardize any future relationship between Liyue and Sumeru with distrust. Yelin pouted before she smiled slightly. I guess in the future I will have to have a direct chat to measure what sort of person he is. Yelin thought before a saucy grin appeared on her face. Although based on Ningyuang's expression and movements, the unmovable Ningyuang herself is looking for more than a professional relationship with the savior of Liyue. I wonder if he can give a good massage. It's not the worst idea to get to know an impressive male like Naruto better. Yelin mused with a seductive look as she licked her lips in appreciation. There was another half-adepti in the crowd as she looked at Naruto with interest. AN6. Naruto Uzumaki, huh? I wonder what kind of diplomatic role he plays in Sumeru. From what I understand, the laws and rules of Sumeru were written for the most part by the sages of the academia, but that may have changed. I do not believe that those laws would have allowed someone as powerful as Naruto Uzumaki to interfere in the affairs of Liyue, diplomat or not. Yanfei thought to herself as she put a hand under her chin in wonder. Unlike Ganyu, who was known to be at least several thousands of years old due to her half-adepti heritage, Yanfei's age was not known. However, she did act like a woman in her mid-20s, with her half-adepti heritage, allowing her to be ageless at a certain point. Yanfei was a woman who appeared to be about 18 to 19 with pale complexion, bright teal-green colored eyes, and salmon-colored hair that reached past her shoulders. Her half-adepti traits mostly shown in her cream-colored antlers, somewhat hidden in her hair on top of her hair. She wore a red-colored scheme with a red hat, a dark red-black backless crop top that exposed her back and stomach. She also wore a short red skirt and dark red boots that went halfway up her knees. Back with Naruto and Ningyuang. As the crowd was cheering Ningyuang and the Kixing, Ganyu was looking a tad nervous at all the attention they were getting, and Kiking was looking slightly smug as if expecting this. HMPH, this is how it should have been. Mortals taking control of our country with our own hands and powers. No offense, Lady Ganyu. Kiking stated as she sent a small bow of her head to the half-adepti secretary. Ganyu gave her a dry look before she sighed. I suppose there is no harm. The Archan War is over and Liyue is at peace. The era of mortals taking control and ruling for the next era is something I believe Morax himself would have wanted all along. I of course shall continue to assist in whatever way is needed of me. Ganyu whispered to avoid having anyone listen in about Morax. Naruto smiled, although he did give a slightly annoyed expression at Ningyuang. I don't mind it, but could you step a few feet away? Naruto asked, pointing to his. Ningyuang was close enough she could have rested her chin on his shoulder, and her arm was nearly brushing against his own. I know many males who would not mind and would rather ask for me to never step away. I really don't see what the issue is, savior of Liyue. Ningyuang commented, but she almost purred savior of Liyue and bit her lip seductively. Besides the fact that I don't want even more rumors spread about me, it does send a message that the beautiful Lady Ningyuang of the Kixing is having a romance or flirting with a diplomat of Sumeru. Naruto commented with a sigh as he shifted his head to the crowd. There was already several men and women whispering and pointing at the two, especially at Naruto and Ningyuang, hands which were almost touching. Ningyuang ignored the crowd and smirked, causing her beautiful face to shine as her eyes sparkled with mischief. Oh? Is the almighty savior of Liyue scared of a few rumors about himself? Plus, I would consider it an even trade for a rumor or two, as I did get you find my beautiful and attractive. Ningyuang claimed as she leaned in to whisper in his eye. It made the crowd gasp as the kind but seemingly eternal single Ningyuang leaned in as if they were some sort of couple. I would have to be lying if I didn't say you were beautiful. Heck, I think any man who is interested in women would say you are beautiful. Naruto replied back unabashedly as if talking about the weather and not having the Ningyuang press against him. Naruto then got his own smile full of mischief and playfulness on his face. But you know what? Naruto whispered as his own hot breath teased her ear, making Ningyuang shudder. Lady Ganyu, Lady Kiking and Lumine are also beautiful women, so you do have competition. Naruto added as he stepped back with a bright smile and a look of self-satisfaction. Ningyuang blush vanished as had her jaw drop, looking like a fish for just a moment. She then looked annoyed with her hands on her hips as she glared at Naruto. Ganyu fanned her face having heard his comment, while Kiking had a slight flustered look with her cheeks slightly red as she tried to avoid looking at Naruto. Payman tried to resist giggling while Lumine scowled, but her cheeks were also red. Lumine was pleased at the comment but had a feeling that there were other women he had told they were beautiful. The crowd were whispering to themselves as it seemed like Naruto had said something that set off Ningyuang, especially as they looked like lovers not even a minute ago. Naruto turned to address the crowd as he put a hand out for silence. It's the hero Naruto Uzumaki. A brave boy shouted as his parents nodded in approval. Naruto smiled with an easy smile before it became softer and more sincere. People of Liyue. I know you have all had to transition to a difficult truth. Your Archan Morax will no longer guide you like he has since Liyue founding. Naruto stated as the people bowed their heads in respect for their fallen god. Naruto caught the eye of Zhongli, who nodded to him even as he kept his head down. However, I have been here for a short time and I can say with absolute certainty that you will be fine. You are a people who has been trading and flourishing for years. You have leaders like Lady Ningguang, Lady Keqing and Lady Ganyu who care for your happiness and prosperity. Naruto shouted as he clapped to the ladies of the Kixing. The crowd clapped as well as the three ladies blinked but waved in response. As a diplomat of Sumeru, I know I am expected to act with Sumeru's best interest at all times. However, I will admit I wish for the bonds of friendship and ties to be further with the rest of David as my own goal as well. Naruto admitted with a sheepish grin as he rubbed his head in embarrassment. This got awes from many women in the crowd, while Lumine smiled softly and Payman giggled. Liyue in returns wishes for many years of friendship and trade with Sumeru. I can speak on behalf of the Kixing when I say that we would be honored to have closer relations with Sumeru. Ningguang quickly added as she stepped forward to stand next to Naruto. I agree. Liyue owes a debt, and since Sumeru is your home then you can consider Liyue your second home as well. Keqing stated with a bright smile as she stood on the other side of Naruto. And you looked a tad flustered but stood on Keqing's other side, showing the three Kixing women were putting their support to Naruto. The crowd cheered loudly as if they forgot or ignored just a few minutes ago they were accusing Naruto of being a nobody. I want to say. Naruto started to say before there was a loud ring. Ring ring. 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 Something loudly rung out much to every surprise except Naruto, who only raised an eyebrow. Where's that ringing coming from? Payman asked as she looked around. The sky. Lumine suggested thoughtfully. Call for Naruto. Will you accept? A cheerful childlike female voice rang out seemingly from nowhere. Naruto? Ningguang asked as Naruto smiled and stepped away. Naruto had backed away so his back was now turned to the crowd and the Kixing. Yes. I accept. Please patch her through. Naruto stated as he looked up into the sky with a warm grin. Very well. Please wait just a moment. The same voice stated as the crowd was confused. Is he talking to the air? Who is talking back? A woman asked as the crowd shrugged. Naruto nodded before he flicked his wrist. Several people caught a flicker of green leave his hand as it seemed to be absorbed into the air. After a moment there was a ripple and sound as the air seemed to split in front of Naruto. Ganyu and Keqing summoned their bow and sword respectively as they got into defensive positions, while Ningguang looked at Naruto intently. What's happening? Payman shouted in fear as Lumine bit her lip and put a hand in front of Payman to protect her. The air rippled before it spread open, revealing a black portal of some kind appeared in front of Naruto. There was blue electricity that seemed to flicker and hiss softly along the edges of the portal. My lady. Thank you for the call. Naruto said dutifully as much to Lumine. The Kixing and everyone shocked. Naruto knelt down and bent down to one knee. Naruto is bowing down to the air. Payman shouted in disbelief as he didn't even show that same respect to Morax or fear. He almost seems like a knight kneeling to his queen. Lumine thought with a tiny blush. It's kinda an attractive trait, bad Lumine. I am not thinking like that now. Lumine chided herself mentally before she blinked. My lady. Does that mean that portal or whatever is linked to the Dendro Archon? Lumine asked out loud as the crowd blinked in realization. Oh, you mentioned me, Naruto. That makes me really happy. A cheerful childlike voice sung from inside the portal. That voice sounds so young. Is that really the Dendro Archon Buer? I know it is said the Archons can manifest however they like, but the reverence and respect in Naruto's voice sounds like it directed to someone much older. Ningguang beepized as she looked at Naruto, bowed head out the corner of her eyes. How have you been, Mr. Hero of Liyue? The voice asked playfully with a slight giggle at the end. Naruto looked up about to reply, but he seemed to freeze when he heard the Liyue crowd start talking. Is that child? She seems so young. Can an Archon really be that young? I dunno, I don't really trust anyone who sounds like a child to lead me personally. Yeah, kinda seems like a joke to us. These words seemed to trigger something in Naruto as he shuddered and panted, looking down at the ground. His eyes with wide and his breath shallow. You're looking for Lesser Lord Kusanli? Why do you want to know about that god? That joke of a child is not worthy of the name of Archon, let alone Sumeru deity. Naruto remembered hearing voices like those before he freed Nahida and primal rage took over his very instincts and consciousness. Naruto, is something the matter? Ningguang asked in worry as she saw Naruto's expression briefly and saw his breathing hasten. The crowd was still chatting away as if nothing was wrong till an irate Keqing had enough. Hey. Shut up. There is something wrong with Naruto, so unless you know why, keep your damn mouths closed. Keqing snapped with her face in a scowl. The crowd clammed up and looked at Naruto, who was hunched over before he stood up rapidly. Oh dear. Now you have done it. The female voice sighed with a hint of worry in her tone. Done what? Wait, Naruto seems different. Ningguang thought as she looked over at Naruto. Naruto bangs now covered his eyes, casting a shadow over the top half of his face, while his mouth was set in a deadly calm frown. So you're just like them, huh? Mocking my Archon due to her appearance and lack of power? Naruto asked as he seemed to look over at the crowd despite his bangs covering his eyes. There appeared to a whirlwind surrounding Naruto, as the wind itself seemed to gather around Naruto in a circle. Naruto. Nobody meant anything to your Archon. Lumine shouted, but Naruto didn't appear to hear her. Nobody hurts Nahida. In any way. That is the promise I made to her when she gave me a purpose and a goal. Nobody. Naruto declared softly before yelling the last part, looking up as his bangs no longer covered his eyes. His sky blue eyes now looked furious with electricity flowing between them. Beep, what did you do, idiot? I didn't mean anything, I swear. The crowd promised that they cowered when the wind started to pick up. Naruto whirlwind got more intense as he started to hover in the center and rise up in his mini hurricane. There was even blue electricity sparking along the hurricane as Naruto's furious expression was glaring down at the crowd of Liyue. The Payman is scared. Payman declared as she hid behind Lumine's shoulder, who was wide-eyed. Is this the depth of the devotion to Buer? Any threat or insult to her drives him to this? Lumine thought, but she didn't feel fear or anger. Naruto, is Nahida really the one who gave you purpose in this world? Is there nothing you won't do to preserve her legacy? Lumine thought as she looked up at the angry Naruto. She absentmindly held her skirt down to avoid revealing her panties, but unlike the people around her, she was not showing any fear. It's the power of a storm? Kiking asked in awe even as she summoned her sword and got into a defensive position. Lightning and wind picked up gradually as Naruto's rage was apparent. Ningguang had leapt back several feet as she narrowed her eyes in thought. What should we do? Can we even win if we all attacked? That power he used against Oshul was something beyond my wildest dreams. Ningguang thought before her eyes widened. Ganyu had summoned her bow and with a look of resolve, had charged up a shot full of cryo energy and pointed the arrow at Naruto in the center of the hurricane. Beep, Ganyu is aiming at Naruto, Payman shouted even as she was struggling to not be blown away from the wind. The Myliath had already ushered the crowd away as they stood in between the civilians and Naruto's storm. Ganyu grimaced before she released her charged shot as the arrow flew at high speed towards Naruto's head, even as he was looking not at her but the crowd. It brings me no joy, hero of Liyue, but I have sworn to protect Liyue as well. Forgive me. Ganyu thought in sorrow watching her powerful arrow approach Naruto's head. Suddenly, much to Ganyu and everyone's shock, Naruto's hand had reached through the storm and grabbed Ganyu's arrow out of the air. Naruto still wasn't looking at Ganyu, but it was clear he was not shocked at the least at the arrow. Naruto had grabbed the arrow out of the air with 2 fingers. His second and third finger and elegantly held the arrow. The arrow lost its flight path but had to release the cryo energy stored up. The arrow exploded in a blast of cryo. The wind quickly blew away the explosion, showing Naruto's hand was unharmed as it retreated back into the hurricane to Ganyu's despair. I couldn't even phrase him, and that arrow was full of my powers. Ganyu wept as she looked at the blonde whose power once again showed to surpass hers by an unimaginable amount. Naruto put a hand over his head as lightning gathered above him. Enough. The childlike voice of Buer shouted, but it lacked any cheerfulness or playfulness from before. Suddenly, to everyone's shock, Naruto seemed to freeze as the lightning vanished as his eyes returned to their normal blue. Naruto's hurricane vanished as he slowly floated back to the ground. Naruto no longer looked like he was in a trance anymore. Naruto hovered a few feet away from the ground as he ignored everything to focus on the portal. With a crackle of electricity and green dendro energy, the portal seemed to stabilize. Buer calmed down Naruto with just a simple command. Lumine asked in wonder as the winds and lightning had vanished. This got everyone to lower their weapons as they looked warily at Naruto now. Nahida. Naruto mumbled as he looked tired but dropped to his knee like before. The portal had now turned transparent as an imagine started to form. That portal, Ningguang mumbled in surprise. The portal was now similar to a window. On the other side of the portal was an imagine of the Dendro Archon standing in some sort of underground building and presumably Sumeru. We can see her now. This kind of power, it's far beyond hearing the person, but to actually see them from this distance. Lumine thought it awe as she focused on the imagine of the Dendro Archon. Like the voice suggested, it was indeed a childlike Archon on the other side, but Lumine gulped. The Archon was rather short girl who had fair skin, white hair with actual leaf on the side and green eyes. She wore a short white and green dress along with gold bracelet on her right wrist and white socks on her feet. The thing that made Lumine shudder was the Dendro Archon eyes. They were glowing green and seemed to glow with Dendro power. The sensation. It's not the same probably because she isn't standing next to me, but it almost feels like when Zhongli and Naruto were having their standoff. This is the power of Archons when they are mad. Lumine thought to herself as she glanced to the side to see Payman. This is similar but not as intense as Morax when he fights. This is the first time I have seen an Archon besides him, but I fully understand that she an Archon, no doubt. Ganyu thought as she had dismissed her bow once Naruto had released his hurricane. AN8. Payman didn't seem to pay much attention to the Dendro Archon and just seemed to focus on the downed Naruto. That is more than enough, Naruto. Stand down. Nahida voice commanded with such confidence and power, even the citizens of Liyue looked tempted to kneel. This child know this Archon now. I can understand how someone like Naruto could kneel to her. She seems to be in complete control of the room despite her appearance. Ningguang thought to herself as she resisted the urge to bow as well, especially when those glowing green eyes seemed to penetrate someone's very soul. Naruto was silent as he bowed his head in shame. Now apologize to Liyue for your little show. Nahida demanded as she crossed her arms with her eyes continuing to glow with them, showing a hint of disappointment in them. Naruto head zipped forward showing a furious expression, but Nahida didn't even flinch. They mocked you and you expect I will apologize to them? Naruto asked in disbelief as the crowd and Liyue looked uncomfortable and fearful of his tone. Nahida's eyes narrowed as she glowed with intense light that made everyone cover their eyes even through the projection. In a few moments the childlike Archon was replaced with a much older mature Archon who had the same hair, skin and eye color but seemed closer to Ningguang's physical age. AN9. Naruto turned to glare at the crowd when several men started to gawk at Nahida in her mature form. The men flinched especially when several women in the crowd gave those same men looks of disappointment. Enough, Naruto. I am asking you as a friend to let it go. Nahida told him, but her voice was much more mature and commanding than before. It also didn't help now when she crossed her arms over her chest, it caught the attention of the crowd even more. Her chest was now much larger, along with her more mature features like her hips and waist. So not fair. How did she magically become a model like Ningguang when she was barely older looking than Klee not even 5 minutes ago? Lumine thought with jealousy. I swore I would protect you from anything and anyone who would do you harm, not matter what. Someone mocking you is the same to me as hurting you emotionally. Naruto revealed with his eyes shining as his hand clenched. Naruto. Nahida spoke softly despite her eyes still glowing with dendro power. You spent all that time. I will never let anyone ever do that to you again. Naruto stated furiously as he gasped and Ningguang noticed tears were on the edge of his eyes. Whatever happened to the Dendro Archon was so severe that Naruto appears to have decided to protect her from anything now. Ningguang thought as she silently gestured to the Millith to stand down. The Millith nodded as they dispersed but kept in visual contact. This allowed the crowd to slowly edge towards the front stage again. I know. You are my guardian and protector, but I also have to be the one to tell you when you've gone too far. Please just apologize for me. Nahida pleaded as her eyes flickered with dendro power and compassion when she looked at Naruto. Naruto bit his lip as he looked down. You are right about being the one who stops me from going too far. I only spared the sages because of your wishes and not because I thought exile was a good enough punishment for their crimes. Naruto admitted as his anger flickered again. The anger inside of him died down when he saw his Nahida look at him with empathy, as if she could tell his thoughts. Naruto took a deep breath as he turned around to face the crowd. To their shock Naruto bowed to the waist but did not get on his knees like he had with Nahida. I want to say I am sorry. I let my anger consume me over a harmless comment and that was wrong. Lady Buer has showed me I have to let small things slide, especially when I consider that she is not your god. Naruto admitted bowing his head. After a few moments there was clapping from the crowd, which was followed by more clapping as Naruto raised his head. Ningguang, Ganyu and Kiking nodded their heads after a moment to approach Naruto. On behalf of the Kixing we apologize for this misunderstanding and we would like to extend our thanks to Lady Buer for settling this misunderstanding peacefully. Ningguang declared calmly as Naruto stood back up. Unseen the others Zhongli's shoulders rested as his calm expression betrayed his narrowed eyes. For just a moment his eyes had glowed with geo power. Although one young woman saw the subtle change in Zhongli having stood right beside him and feeling a certain pressure for just a moment. He claims he is just Mr. Zhongli, but he did seem ready to intervene just now. Almost like an adept he would, no? Yudao thought to herself with a playful smile that hid her smirk. Nahida's eyes had lost their dendro glow and returned to a more playful natural green. No thanks needed. Naruto is my underling or rather my representative. He is my responsibility. Nahida declared calmly as her smile made several men's hearts throb as her face had a certain beauty in her mature form. Naruto once again bowed his head in apology before he rubbed his head. Sorry. I am usually rather calm and collected, but the one thing that does cause me to go off the edge is anyone insulting Lady Buer. Naruto admitted with a sigh. It is sweet that you care so much, Naruto, but remember we don't want people looking at us with fear. We want understanding for all the lands. That is our goal. Nahida reminded him kindly before she blinked. Oops. Nahida commented before there was another flash of light as she returned to her childlike cute form. It seems I overextended a bit too much today. I need to keep practicing. Nahida thought to herself with a pout. Naruto sighed, but gave Nahida a look of sympathy before he turned to the crowd with a glare. Not a word about her appearance, got it? She might not be your archon, but she deserves respect. Naruto warned with his eyes glowing for just a moment to show his point. Naruto. Nahida sighed in her childlike voice as she closed her eyes. I am just warning them. I won't hurt them, but I still won't let anyone mock you. Never again. Naruto explained with a look of determination. Nahida took another deep breath before she nodded. Peking stepped forward as she opened her mouth before closing it with an uncertain look. Don't worry, you can ask what you want. Naruto assured her calmly with a gentle smile as Peking bit her lip. Why is Lady Buer in different forms? Aren't archons supposed to live for centuries? Live the adepti? Peking asked after a moment hesitation. Lumine and Payman shared a look as they knew Zhongli had told Peking and Ganyu about his identity as Morax, or rather the current form of Morax. Peking must be trying to subtly and politely asking why Buer is choosing to in that younger form. Or rather why she had to turn back from her mature form, that more closely Zhongli human form physical age. Lumine thought to herself with a look of worry, wondering if Naruto would take offense to this. Payman thinks Naruto is super protective of Buer, so he will see through that smokescreen instantly. Payman thought dryly. Naruto's eyes narrowed for a moment before sighing. He crossed his arms and exchanged a look with Nahida, who nodded. Naruto looked past the crowd to eye Zhongli, who had a smile on his face, but his shoulders were tense. Seems like Zhongli does care what happened to Nahida, especially seeing her as much younger than he would have remembered her as. Naruto thought to himself with a smile of approval. As the god of wisdom, I am aware that Morax is no longer the archon of Liyue. I was aware of this before I asked Naruto to come deal with Oshul. Nahida declared, getting the crowd to whisper before they looked at Naruto with smiles again. I personally believe with how the Kixing have handled things that mortals running Liyue is the correct choice. You also still have the adepti watching over Liyue from the distance, so this land is in good hands. Nahida stated with a bright smile. This got the crowd to start to cheer for Nahida, making Naruto nod in approval before Ningguang raised her hands for silence. Since Morax is no longer watching over you, I do not feel this information needs to be hidden. Nahida declared as her eyes grew serious. It is true that archons, or rather the beings who turn into archons, have much longer lifespans than humans do, and it is true we can manifest our bodies into whatever forms we shall choose. However, what is not well known as if that the bodies we inhabit is based on a familiar form we are comfortable with. We gradually can change that form, but when we get comfortable with a form that becomes our base form, that changing out of takes tremendous energy. Nahida revealed as the crowd gasped. AN10. But why then is this form your base form and not the older self we saw briefly? Ganyu asked with wide eyes. Naruto and Nahida clenched their fists and bit their lips with a look of annoyance before sighing. My powers, unlike the rest of the seven, are not fully mature at the moment. This form is what my powers naturally manifested as. The older form is just a temporary form at the moment I have to practice going into. Who knows, maybe someday that will be the form I naturally turn into, but not today. Nahida explained with her eyes looking off into the sky. Naruto caught Nahida lip quivering as his eyes sparked before Nahida shook her head. The crowd was gasping at the knowledge, while Zhongli's eyes narrowed as he frowned as one of his hands in his pocket clenched. That doesn't make sense. I remember her being older, or at least her vessel being closer to the one we saw briefly. What exactly happened to my old friend? Zhongli thought as his eyes very briefly glowed with geo power, but luckily everyone was focused on Nahida and did not focus on him. But Kiking asked before Naruto raised his hand. That's enough. Nahida doesn't need to explain herself to anyone. Naruto declared coldly as his eyes looked like they were holding back from glaring at everyone. Naruto. Nahida sighed, but Naruto still shook his head before he crossed his arms. I will just say that the sages of the Academia are no longer in charge. So any inquiries will be directed towards Lady Buer, including about different region relations. That is how it works. Naruto stated as he stared down at Ganyu, Kiking and Ningguang, who looked worried. They did nod and turned to the crowd, who were confused but nodded as well. Ah, so those sages that I heard of have been taken down from power. I cannot say I have any sympathy, especially if what Naruto is implying, they had something to do with Buer's current state. Zhongli thought as he saw Naruto briefly smirk when he talked about the Academia. Nahida turned back to Naruto as she smiled easily, looking at Naruto with interest. So, Naruto? Has Liyue been accommodating? I would think they would want to treat you as my guest, especially after you saved them from a god from their past. Nahida suggested with her eyes wriggling and a smile. However, people with sharp senses like Ningguang, Ganyu, Kiking, Yudao, Lumine and Zhongli caught the undertone that said or else. Naruto nodded and gave a thumbs up with a grin. Yup. I would say my time in Liyue been quite productive. I mean, meeting Lumine and Payman here is quite the treat. Naruto commented as Payman fluttered around nervously and Lumine had to hide her blush when the crowd looked at her with interest. Nahida raised an eyebrow and nodded as she looked at Lumine and Payman with a smile. Her face briefly frowned for just a moment before it was a smile again. The traveler and Payman. Like Naruto being a descender, I cannot see her actions in the world tree besides the interactions with beings that are recorded. Also, like Naruto, she is not affected by changes to her mensal if it was ever modified. Her memories would stay the same even if there are ripples. Nahida remarked to herself before she briefly looked at Lumine's chest. She is certainly no Nilou or Candace or Dehya, but I can see the appeal from a strictly attractive standpoint. Nahida thought as she saw Naruto give Lumine a small sparkle in his eyes. Naruto continued as he looked over and waved to the three ladies of the Kixing. Plus getting to meet Lady Ganyu, Lady Keqing and Lady Ningguang was quite the pleasure. Quite beautiful leaders of the Liyue after all. A diplomat like me is quite honored to make their acquaintance. Naruto claimed as he gave a polite bow and a charming smile. Keqing had the smallest blush as she closed her eyes and Ganyu fanned her face as she looked down with red cheeks. Ningguang looked amused as she put a delicate hand to her lips and giggled. Most of the crowd were gobstopped at how the friendly but strictly single ladies of the Kixing looked rather charmed by the diplomat of Sumeru. Neither noticed, but Lumine and Nahida both had looks of annoyance at Naruto that quickly got hidden by pouts. Lady Nahida. Please understand the honor is all ours. Liyue owes a great debt to yourself and Naruto. If there is anything we can do we will do our best to do it. Ningguang assured her with a warm smile. Ningguang after bowing turned to Naruto and batted her eyes and licked her lips. And if you ever need anything Naruto or a place to stay you just need to ask me. Ningguang purred as Naruto smiled at her. Ganyu and Keqing glared at her as Ningguang walked back to them, but not before she leaned into Naruto's shoulder just enough so he could get a smell of her sweet scent memorized. Shen along with Cloud Retainer could see the portal and Nahida as Cloud Retainer looked at Shen. Child. What do you think of the Dendro Archon? Cloud Retainer asked waiting for her response. Shen had an unimpressed look as she crossed her arms over her chest. She seems to be rather fragile. I do not understand how a land can worship or expect someone like her to protect them. Shen stated bluntly as she heard stories about the power of Morax. She seems nothing like Morax or at least Morax in the past. The stories of the god who triumphed in the Archon War makes this little one seem like nothing in comparison. Shen thought. Child. You still can only see what is on the surface and not what is inside. Do not look down on the Dendro Archon. The child Naruto Uzumaki has chosen to bow to her and he is someone to look out for. Cloud Retainer stated with a sigh. Shen chose to not respond as they continued to watch the scene from afar. They could hear what was being said due to Cloud Retainer adepti powers and Shen training to enhance her senses. Naruto just smiled as he briefly glanced at Nahida who was frowning but hid it rather well with a polite smile, but he could see her little eyebrows twitching in annoyance. Hey. Get away from Naruto-sama. A musical woman voice shouted from the portal as Nahida sighed. Now you have done it Naruto. Must you be so polite to every girl you meet? Nahida whispered as she resisted slapping her palm to her face in annoyance, as this seemed to be a regular thing. Naruto shrugged as he gently but quickly slid away from Ningguang as he closed his eyes and rubbed his head. He gave the portal and Nahida a smile even as he looked a tad embarrassed. Sorry Lady Nahida. There is no need to shout Nilou. There is a crowd after all. Naruto apologized, but his tone held a playful tone of amusement. The crowd of Liyue perked up turning from 180 before when Ningguang was showing affection to Naruto. Now they seemed interested rather than jealous of Naruto. Who is Nilou? That voice I wonder how she looks like. The voices chanted in excitement. Nahida sighed as she stepped aside to let Nilou step forward into the view of the portal. Nilou stepped forward as she frowned at Naruto with her hands on her hips. However, the crowd specifically the men jaw dropped when Nilou was in view as most men heart throbbed and their eyes turned heart-shaped. Nilou's very face could lit up a room with its sheer beauty. Nilou was a remarkably beautiful woman who looked to be just under 20 if not early 20s. She was a young woman with fair skin, long bright red hair that was shoulder length in the front and past her hips in the back. Her hair was loose in the front and tied into two long ponytails in the back. On her forehead was harem style with a small opening for her forehead. She had light aqua blue eyes that seemed to sparkle with innocence and purity. She had notably curvy form with fairly large breasts, although smaller than Ningguang and Yelin fit her medium height frame. She had rather large hips and small waist, giving her a very notable Hercules figure. She also wore a small amount of pink lipstick on her lips and blue finger and toenail polish. AN11. Nilou was dressed in a fairly modest but sensual dancer outfit that drew the looks of every man with lust and even the females with envy. She wore a long white veil on her head and on top of she a crown-looking piece that was black and golden with golden horns on the headpiece. She also wore a gold tiara-like ornament on her forehead with a small gold piece directly over her forehead. Her top was white and blue crop top with sleeves going to her wrists. The crop top notable was short enough to expose her entire well-toned stomach and waist and seemed to bulge slightly due to her breasts. Unseen to most, the crop top was backless besides a small strap in the back resembling a bra strap. This showed her slender back, which was covered only in a red symbol. Under her stomach she wore a fluttery light blue skirt that ended at her lower hips and many small pieces of jewelry and designs on the skirt. On her left thigh she wore a golden trinket and on her feet she wore tall strapped knee-high gladiator sandals with medium heels. This exposed her long legs and her toenails, even as she could walk comfortably. Her silky-looking thighs were highlighted as her skirt was longer at the back and shorter and fluttery at the front. Hot dancer, was the thought of Liyue and even Payman and Lumine when they first saw Nilou, even as she was putting her hands on her hips. HMMPH. Oops. Nilou pouted before she looked around to see most of Liyue in the audience. Hello people of Liyue. My name is Nilou and a dancer of Sumeru City. Nilou stated politely with a smile that seemed to brighten anyone's day. Naruto chuckled when he saw the men yelling to get Nilou attention, even as her smile was simply polite and warm. Beautiful as ever, Nilou. Naruto complimented with a grin. Nilou heard Naruto and gasped. She instantly blushed as she covered her red cheeks with her hands. Naruto-sama. Please don't say it so casually. Nilou stated with her blush enhancing her beauty. Ningguang noted Nilou seemed to be rather nervous around Naruto. She seems fine in crowds, which I suppose if she is a dancer is a given, but around Naruto, she seems more like a schoolgirl in love. Ningguang thought in amusement. Nilou was looking to the side with her blush as she nervously put one hand on her front bangs and played with it. I wonder if he likes my hair? I tried to make it extra shiny as Lady Nahida told us this would be when she makes contact with Naruto-sama. Nilou thought nervously. Besides Nilou, Nahida was silently pouting as she looked up at the beautiful dancer idol with envy. I love Nilou, but she really gets a lot of attention wherever she goes, but only has eyes on Naruto. Although I suppose I can't really blame her, as even I, Nahida thought to herself. She doesn't look that much older than my physical age, but she is way more mature than me. Plus, she seems to have no problem dressing like that. Lumine thought with jealousy as Nilou's chest was bigger than hers, she had longer silkier hair, and she had more well-defined curves than her own. Is she Naruto's type? Lumine silently thought as she looked at Naruto, who was smiling cheerfully at Nilou, even as she was acting nervously around him. Wow, Payman thinks Nilou is super popular, but Nilou seems to only focus on Naruto. Payman noted even as the crowd was pouting that the model was only looking at the hero of Liyue. Haha. I am only speaking the truth, plus I know you had many fans who tell you the same every day. Naruto explained as Nilou blush receded as she giggled. That is true, Naruto-sama, but they are just fans. They aren't you, Naruto-sama. Nilou told him honestly as she gave an attractive wink and smiled to him. Well, I guess I will have to keep being honest so I can enjoy you, smile and laugh, Nilou. Naruto told her with a smile as he looked at her directly in the eyes. Naruto-sama, I will do my best then. Nilou declared as her smile seemed to magnify and light up the room from Naruto's compliment. Don't tell me the cutie is interested in him. A man from Liyue complained as a woman behind him rolled her eyes. Well, if you were more like Naruto then maybe you would have more attention too. The woman scolded him, who pouted. Nahida saw the looks exchanged between Naruto and Nilou and decided to put the attention back on herself. Yes, Nilou. Thank you. Nahida told her briskly as Nilou blinked and bowed. Sorry, Lady Nahida. I know this is your chat with Naruto-sama. Nilou apologized as she waved to Naruto and stepped back but was still in the frame of the portal. Of course, Lady Buer. Anything you ask of me I shall do. Naruto confirmed after waving back to Nilou, who smiled at him. Nahida looked at Naruto seriously as she put a hand on her chin. Naruto. What do you think of increasing the relationship between Liyue and Sumeru? Up till now all the regions of Teyvat have been fairly stagnant. Besides trading for necessity, the countries themselves have never bothered to be overly concerned with the affairs of other countries. Nahida asked as the Kixing nodded as well. Yes, I believe that nurturing the relationship between our countries will only help improve both, but I can only speak on behalf of Liyue. Ningguang noted with Ganyu and Kixing nodding. Naruto nodded as he looked around. I believe that Liyue has a great deal of good people. I have only been here a short time, but I have felt like this could be a second home to me. I personally believe making the relationship between Liyue and Sumeru stronger is only a good thing. Naruto declared as the people of Liyue cheered and clapped. Nahida nodded in approval. Very well. I will reach out in the future about some sort of agreement or alliance of some sort between our countries. Naruto will, as my representative, will also be a diplomat between Sumeru and any other countries we are allied with. Liyue can be the first one that is formally allied with Sumeru. Nahida declared as Naruto bowed and the Kixing were pleased as well. The crowd went wild as they cheered and clapped at the news, while Lumine and Payman also clapped as well. Nilou also clapped, but her eyes were focused solely on Naruto, who was smiling as he looked at the crowd. Nilou then frowned as she walked back next to Nahida. "Yes, Nilou? Is something the matter?" Nahida asked kindly as she looked up at the taller girl who had a small smile on her face. "Yes, Lady Nahida. I would like to address the citizens of Liyue for a moment," Nilou stated in her usual musical voice that entranced men and women alike. Nahida stared at her for a moment before nodding and stepping aside. "Very well. I see no problems with that," Nahida stated as Nilou took a deep breath. "Okay, remember, just stay calm. No matter who is starring, all that is really important is to get your feelings out and not worry about what anyone says. That is what Naruto-sama taught me." Nilou thought to herself, resisted blushing as she remembered Naruto spending countless hours with her watching her practice. Naruto-sama's arms were so warm. Nilou thought as her heart fluttered. She remembered whenever she tripped or became tired from dancing, Naruto would catch him in her arms and they would share a meal with her in his lap. "Dear Archons. The pretty dancer is back," a man whispered loudly as the men cheered incredibly lightly when Nilou stepped back in view of the portal. Lumine and Payman exchanged unimpressed looks, with Lumine feeling just a tad jealous of Nilou's beauty and charisma. Lumine could tell every male in Liyue could not keep their eyes away from Nilou's beauty, with plenty of women looking at her with envy. "Hello, people of Liyue," Nilou said in her normal airy voice and a warm smile and wave. "Hi, Nilou." The crowd chanted back and cheered at the pretty redhead. Nilou's smile turned to a frown as her aqua blue eyes seemed to glow along with her hydro vision on the back of her skirt. "I heard someone disrespect Lady Nahida earlier." Nahida's voice seemed to darken as her eyes glowed. "I might not be as powerful as Lady Nahida or Naruto-sama, but my loyalty to Lady Nahida is just as strong. So let me warn you, people of Liyue. Any insult to Lady Nahida is an insult to us all." Nilou warned as her hair seemed to take a life of its own and started to float in the air in a threatening manner. Hydro energy also started to swirl around her as her hydro vision appeared to reacting to her anger. The people of Liyue started to whimper and meekly nodded, accepting the warning. Ningyuang frowned but held her tongue, knowing that it was not a true threat. "Wow, Nilou hair reminds me of the stories of Kachan's legendary temper." Naruto thought to himself with a chuckle before he nodded to himself. However, Nilou is very pretty on her own and she will continue to grow more beautiful and talented as time goes on. Naruto amended to himself as he knew Nilou's beauty and reputation would eventually spread past Sumeru's borders as Sumeru reached out to other lands. Nahida sighed, closing her eyes, but had a small smile of gratitude. "As much as I appreciate all the support once again, I must insist that you do not threaten people in my name. It is not how I want to rule, let alone be seen," Nahida stated as she opened her eyes and crossed her tiny arms over her small chest. Nilou blinked as the hydro vision stopped glowing and the hydro energy vanished. She and Naruto looked embarrassed as they rubbed the back of their heads in a similar manner. "Forgive me, Lady Nahida," they both chanted at once. Naruto grinned at Nilou, who shyly put a hand over her cheeks. The crowd sighed in relief, although a few men did mumble about pretty blonde boys getting all the attention which the woman near them sighed at them. Nahida turned back to Naruto with a serious expression. "Naruto?" Nahida said as she looked up at Naruto's blue eyes. "Yes, my lady?" Naruto asked dutifully as he bowed his head to her. "What do you think of joining Lumine and Payman on their adventures for a while?" Nahida asked as she pointed to the shocked duo. "Huh?" Lumine asked with a head tilt. "Hum again for Payman?" Payman asked just as confused. Naruto's face was completely shocked as he looked at Lumine and Payman. "Eh?" was Naruto's only response. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.